Knuckle grip in the neon light, trading pain in the heart of the fight. Shifting gears till the edge feels right. Start 'em up, hear the engines cry. Let the thunder roll, leave no doubt. All or nothing when the checkers come out. Doors beating doors in an all-out fight. This is a Moonshiners Wednesday night. Wednesday night! Legends born in the heat of the fight. Trading pain under stadium lights. Racing roots run deep here. We're racing on a Moonshiners Wednesday night. Every track has a story to tell. Every wall has been one driver's hell. Back in the saddle we go. Ring the bell like a moonshiner. We're riding on rails. Checkers on record. Send it in, set sail. Legends born in the heat of the fight. Trading pain under stadium lights. Racing roots run deep here. We're racing on a Moonshiners Wednesday night. This is 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 a Moonshiners Wednesday night.
Tonight, the Moonshiners Racing League gets ready for some short track thrills. This evening, the GMD Janitorial Cup Series gets all set to go from Richmond as we count down to green for the PayRVA 300 here on Precision Entertainment. Welcome to tonight's coverage. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the move tonight is Dawson Wise. Our producer this evening is Howie Burrows. He was using cameras provided by Whiplash SimCams. This evening is going to be a thrill for some, and it's going to be chills for others. To say the very least, Richmond, not an easy track. And tonight, we look to see if the field can avoid attrition here at the action track.
Yeah, more of an attrition-filled race is what I anticipate tonight compared to last week at Iowa. Last week was all about racing the car and racing the track with the tire issues we saw over the course of that one last week. This week, more traditional short-track racing, and then it might be more chaotic, more chaos-filled, shall we say. Remember the moments that Richmond has created over the last few years over on the NASCAR side of things, the crazy finishes, the big-time crashes, track blocking incidents on the backstretch. Richmond has become known as a Bristol or Martinsville style short track over the past 15 years or so. Surely tonight we get more of that at this 3/4 mile oval.
Indeed, and remember the championship standings are relatively tight for the cut line. Mark Sanchez now has the advantage coming in. William Owens, the first one out. Drivers like Bowie, Coffey, Murray, Fetter Place essentially locks for a couple weeks out for the postseason. However, when it comes to that request for the chase, one major mistake from anyone, I'd say 15th on back, and Loudon and Daytona get ever more interesting.
I think you got to look even beyond that, up to 14th. Kenny Reel's only 23 points above the line with just 3 races to go. I think if he makes a mistake, he could be in that boat as well. Again, one bad race, if you finish in the 20s or the 30s, and you're all of a sudden on the outside looking in. Remember how many problems we saw for guys around the cut line last week. Surely that's not going to happen the next 3 weeks at Richmond, Loudon, and Daytona. One of these weeks, a couple of those guys are going to strike gold and come into one of these races and gain those points. You have to be at your best for the next 3 races if you want to make a run in the chase.
You may notice cars on the racetrack right now. It's usually qualified. It is qualified. Here's the situation. There was an issue with the previous session set up for tonight's action, so they had to remake the server about a couple hours ago. Unfortunately, they accidentally made it 10 minutes of open qualifying, and it has been spinny car after spinny car. Brandon Bowie has wrecked his car at least 3 times alone this session. It's not been a pretty qualifying effort for most of the field. It's made it a slalom course for some.
Well, what it's going to do is it's also going to shake up our starting order a little bit here in terms of, a car that may have had good single car speed in qualifying for those track conditions and not in traffic. You would have had to get lucky to get that kind of track opening to get out and run your best possible lap. So now some guys are not going to be able to run that optimal lap on their setups coming into tonight and put themselves up on the grid. They're going to start deep in the field, potentially have to drive through the field. Compared to practice results, already some differences, even just in the top 10 guys that were not there are up inside the top 10 guys towards the top of the board. Not as much in this open qualifying session. It shakes things up and creates some chaos, to say the least, to start this one tonight from Richmond.
Indeed, it's going to be an interesting night. We still have a few moments before the cars get themselves rolling in of itself. As a matter of fact, they finish up the open qualifying. There is some runoff, but the grid's essentially set for tonight. As you can see, it's Alex Murray who's going to get the chance to control this field tonight, setting the pole by just 2 1,000ths over Alex Coffey. Then, in third spot, you'll find Timothy Harper. Alongside him, Brandon Feder plays 53 1,000ths off the pole. Home race for drivers like Corey Moore tonight. He'll start in the 5th position in the PayRVA race, and a home race for the sponsor, Paul Gallimore, is in 6th tonight. Matt Cox will start in 7th. Alongside him is Chris Cornett, who's just more than a 10th back. Nico Garcia makes an appearance tonight in a green, black, and gray machine. Brandon Bowie did put up a solid effort despite the crashes. He was in 10th.
I got row 6, another new paint scheme tonight for Sean Rogers. Blue, yellow, pink, and black aboard that brand new Beast Mode performance entry. He'll go from 11th. Alongside him, William Owens brings familiar colors to the track, an important race for that precision-powered entry. Row 7, we'll see Ryan Catalano, the man for topping off Hot Sauce, roll from 13th. Alongside him, again, similar colors for Blake Hoschild tonight. He'll have some work to do from the 14th spot. Row 8, another man who needs a good one tonight. Blaine Wilson sees that gap starting to disintegrate just a little bit to the cut line. He'll start from 15th, and a guy who desperately needs a good run. He's got work to do. It's Nigel Christensen from P16. Row 9, Mark Sanchez in the 29 is back again tonight. The all-silver and red 29 will start from 17th, alongside the red line entry of Kenny Reel. Just 23 points to the good. He'll start the outside of row 9. And on row 10, Stiggy Sports entry Johnny Shade that will start from 19th position. Alongside him, the newly rebranded car last week, the 25 of Greg Carr, will start from P20.
21st is Jim Treat tonight. He'll start alongside Jose Medina, who's showed an improvement of performance. Chris Vincent rounds out those who took times. The rest of the field did not take times tonight. That includes Chris Davis, Jeff Chandler, Kyle Holden, Wayne Bowen, and Matt Mackin. The inflatable Toyota logos continue to stare everyone down. But 300 laps is a lot for Richmond. We're running 3/4 the cup distance with stages of 60, 60, and then 180, a gauntlet of a third stage.
And one of the longest stages of the year to this point here tonight at Richmond. And surely pit strategy going to be even more important. The window for pitting, I think, is going to be a lot larger than we're used to. In that third stage, it's going to be something that these drivers have not yet encountered. And oh, by the way, should attrition start to take hold, we might butt up against a potential clock limit tonight as well.
2 hours and 30 minutes is the max we have available with the delays for the sessions coming into tonight. So, in our words, few cautions, a lot of cautions if anything, and it could get very interesting here tonight. Overall, though, outside of that conversation point, what are some of the keys to victory for a race like this tonight, especially with the potential of chaos we've seen a lot as of late with some of the races at Richmond for this month?
first and foremost, is keep the nose clean. And I say this at every short track. I said it at Bristol and Martinsville earlier in the year. You've got to keep the car clean in order to make it happen here tonight in this one. So for drivers, you've got to stay out of the chaos. There is going to be some calamity tonight. You've got to stay out of it. Key number 2 is race the racetrack. This racetrack will change. We will get into the nighttime over the course of the next 300 laps. Your car is going to change in balance. You've got to race the racetrack first, and how dynamically it's going to change as temperatures go down, the sun goes down. Surely the cars will handle just a little bit differently. So racing the racetrack. And, the third one is that third stage is a gauntlet, but you've got to set up for it. You've got to have your strategy in mind by the time that stage goes green. So use these first 120 laps to put yourself in position to be on offense in stage 3 rather than on the back foot. You don't want to be in a disadvantageous position. You want to be up front. You want to be able to control the tone of that pit stop in the third stage. Be the one on the front foot when we get to that gauntlet stage 3.
So I think we're just about set to go here, by the way, for the Van Louis Sticker Start Zone here this evening. As we prepare for this evening's coverage here for the Moonshiners Racing League on Precision Entertainment. The PayRVA 300 ready to go. The pace car is off. 3 dig cars in the top 3, 4 in the top 5. Green flag is out. We're underway from Richmond. Look at the chaos back there. Brandon Bowie, for whatever reason, dropping to the back. Already the 35, the points leader with issues. Will Murray battles his teammate side by side to get the edge. A part of the dig camp. The dig 2 entry beats the dig 1 to start.
Yeah, man, for Bowie, must have been slow up the hill of 1 and 2. May have gotten out of the groove and has to get back in the gas to get the rhythm going now, but he has dropped all the way to the tail end of the field. In fact, the last car on track right now in P28 is Bowie. As we look back up front, Coffey was able to outmuscle Alex Murray. Actually timed him up on the initial start very, very well. Beat him to the start-finish line and was able to now slot down in front of him. First battle on the track is Fetter Place inside of Corey Moore. Make it 4 dig cars in the top 4. It's going to be somewhat similar to Iowa. You can use the kind of the outside of that first lane up towards the seam to make passes, especially if your car is dialed in. But it will be a mostly bottom-feeding race. Once again, one car is up there trying to dig and make something happen. That's Cornette in the 84. He's up to Fetter Place.
Yeah, so far so solid for the top grouping, but you can already see a lot of those trying to at least search for grip. We've seen it a couple different leagues at Richmond. You can use a bit of the higher groove, the eNASCAR line, if you will, up against the wall, carry momentum. Right now, drivers like Cox or at least use that middle to roll the top and peel drivers off the wall. But it takes the right setup, and it takes the right amount of rubber buildup to really see these drivers move up the track here on the service. Normally, it's a bottom feeder in many cases in real life, but you can get the higher grooves working if you put in the effort to it here. We've seen as far back as the trucks in 2024, pardon.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go up there, but again, it's going to take the right car balance. I think you may see that as the night goes on, that guys will start to experiment with that line as we get later into the race. And that's been a story of most everywhere we've gone this season, is drivers will start to look for grip, get out of the traffic, get out of the accordion effect that you often see on short tracks when drivers start to hit the brakes going on corner entry. You'll see drivers start to want to get away from that and attempt some different lines and try to make something work. Speaking of making something work, Gallimore outside of Cornette. That was for 5th. Owens is on the move, car 30. That's what we were watching just a second ago. Matt Cox was up there. He has opted to jump back down in behind Cornette, but it's the Bumblebee. Paul Gallimore on the move. He'll get 5th from Chris Cornette, or try to here, as he's about half a car length in front, and he's almost running a diamond line. You see him kind of drift up a little bit and really take that car down towards the bottom in the center of the corner.
Exactly, and we're seeing that really become a conga line of race cars. Dirty air can be pretty tricky here in general, because if you follow along with some of the drivers in particular, these machines get pretty tight with the aero wake. We've seen some of that with Iowa, but tonight, I think you're going to see a fair bit of that case here, even in the midst of the 60 laps and the short runs in the first 2 stages. This track is not an easy one to set yourself rhythm-wise up. It doesn't drive like the intermediate, though, in terms of the package feel like we had at Iowa. Here, it's a lot about the brakes, too, to try to circumvent that and then break the different line. Look at Garcia use the outside, for example.
And again, already some experimentation, just 11 laps in, and already drivers moving around, trying to find a little bit more grip, or, like you said, get out of some of the wake issues that we've seen with this race car. Another car on the move is Sean Rogers. He's trying to get up around Feder Place. Feder Place going the wrong way, and now -7. If Rogers makes the pass here into turn 1, he will. Now, so put Feder Place down 7 spots from where he started in the 34. Rogers trying to get on his horse. So is William Owens. So is Nico Garcia. All those cars have moved up at least 1 spot from where they started. But as you talked about, again, the wake in this car and this track, it's a bit of a hybrid. It's not quite like Martinsville. The straightaways are still somewhat long, especially the front straightaway. Your car gets up towards the rev limiter by the time you get to the entrance of turn 1. Good onboard shot here up towards the front. This is the Matt Cox machine that we're on board with now, going for 5th on Paul Gallimore. Listen to how long this front stretch is right here, and how close you get the chip limiter and just how long it is before you're back on the brakes.
Yep, and right now, Matt Cox is still trying to get himself working higher up. Nothing really doing yet. He's only picked up a couple. William Owens is actually one of the biggest movers so far, up 4. +6 as well was for a moment Chris Vincent. And the interesting in the case, at least for, I think, some of those like Owens and company, it's the question, do they burn up the short run expecting there to be cautions, or are they going to be able to steady out on the long run? That's the question. You see in front of him, Cornette and Gallimore trying to battle, just as Cox got alongside Moore for position.
And somewhat similar story to Iowa and North Wilkesboro, already beginning to slowly develop, and that's the deeper into the run we get, the better the beast mode performance cars get. Cox, Gallimore starting to gain pace here, about the 16-lap mark of this opening run. Look for Sean Rogers to get on at the same pace here. The 44, he's starting to put pressure on Nico Garcia, just a little bit back of those 2 cars. But again, we've seen it a few times on the short tracks the last month and a half or so. Those cars pick up speed the longer the race goes. And right now it continues to be all Dig Esports. Here at the front, they continue to hold the top 3 spots. Matt Cox is now the chaser there. Another car up a few spots is Blaine Wilson, speaking of Dig Esports, up to 12 from his 15th place starting spot as he works inside the top 12 for the first time and tries to work to get towards the top 10.
Bowen, mind you, is having technical issues, so that might be an issue to watch for his case after missing last week. Take a look at a new paint scheme in the order. You see that 44, Sean Rogers, his paint scheme designer, putting multiple hours of work in for today to get that brand new look in. Usually runs the red machine with the black trim. It's got the different look in the 44 camp here today. We've seen the flashes up. We'll see it more throughout the race today. Shout out to that new look. The same can be said for Murray, who's got the purple look. You can see Murray just got passed by Harper in the past lap.
And Timothy Harper's car starting to pick up a little bit again as we get closer into the nighttime. You'll see the shade really come over turns 3 and 4 as we get deeper into this opening run. So for Harper, he makes the pass there. Murray's starting to slide a little bit off of 4. He's done this a couple of times over the past few laps, starting to chatter the rears just a little bit. And now he's losing ground. In fact, he's going to get attacked here by Matt Cox, who lunged on him there to turn 1. Matt Cox wants 3rd. Behind them, Moore holds off Gallimore for now, and Chris Cornette hangs around. He'll get to the inside of the Bumblebee as well, but behind them's the car that's starting to get on the move. And how many times at a short track this year have we seen that? We just talked about the new paint scheme. Rogers for 8th on William Owens. The longer the run goes, the faster that 44 seems to get.
Indeed, and you can see that new paint scheme continuing to fly. Has a different look as we talked about here tonight on that machine. That would be Chug Jam. That's now on the machine with BMP logos also with a different BMP flavor to it, if you will. Still has the Icon sponsorship, but trying to look a little bit more sporty with it. Also a different number font, if you will. So far, working pretty solidly in the midst of this pack as we're already halfway to the stage. Coming up in the next few laps.
About 7 laps away from halfway in this opening stage. Certainly not the calamity I thought we might have early in the race. I said the same thing last week at Iowa. It didn't happen. Tonight, kind of getting on a similar pattern as guys have singled out and are focusing on getting to this first stage break. Almost some right there. Cornette got up the racetrack in turn 3, missed the entry point, and almost got to Paul Gallimore's left rear and sent him around. Rogers had to jump onto the binders. So a couple of cars struggling a little bit there in turn 3, but everybody keeps it straight, at least for the time being, and Rogers sees an opening, wants to lunge for it, but it's actually Cornette that will lunge here. Crosses over Gallimore. To the inside goes Cornette, but again, the slightest bit of wash up there on the entry of turn 3. Gallimore holds a spot. Big slide for Cornette. Makes the save. No, he doesn't. Slides back to his right, and that's going to draw the caution.
Caution flag is out on the speedway. First time tonight here at Richmond. And the 84 brings it up for the Top It Off Hot Sauce Company replay. Our first Top It Off Hot Sauce look. Receive 50% off the entire order at topitoffsauce.com. Use the code MRL15. That's a common way to lose it around here off turn 4.
Yeah, very similar to what we saw at Iowa a little bit last week as well. Maybe some side force in the 11 car. Gallimore also. Cornette chatters the rears, gets out of shape, almost makes the save, but slides back to his right, and that immediately draws the caution. Race control had a thought there that he might come back up. You see him working the wheel, and he locks it down and holds it down the racetrack, but for a second there, it looked like he was going to come up and collect some other cars. So we go back to live action at the front of the field, and the entire field, it looks like, is on pit road, or at least is making their way down pit road.
Ton of marble buildup on the racetrack, or at least dirt. Uh-oh. I just heard of one thing they may have missed here for tonight here, Dawson. They accidentally gave the entire field all the tire sets. So that's going to change up strategy for every caution, isn't it?
Well, certainly now it seems as if drivers are going to opt to take a set every caution. I mean, that would be certainly my thinking, at least if I'm in the race car at a tire-eating racetrack like Richmond. Matt Mackin, well, stayed out for a moment to lead the race, but perhaps missed the commitment box and is coming back to pit road the second time around. But you'd have to imagine here, when we talk about strategy being so important, and it still will, by the way, if that race gets into a green flag run in stage 3. But for the time being, in terms of running out of tires, there's no risk of that tonight anymore. So, 4, 2, none. Seems to be 4 every time we get a caution, at least would be my guess.
I don't know what to say about this, but it's going to get interesting. Let's put it that way, obviously, with the tire set difference. But that being said here, as we're under caution, obviously, the interesting part now, we'll have about half the stage to go here, Dawson. We're talking about fuel mileage, too, later on. Do you potentially see someone taking a call of, say, 2 tires on one of these short stops coming up, especially with bursts of 30-30, to try and see if it works for later?
I definitely would. Justin, there's no downside to it at this point. Why not? You're not going to run out of right side tires. Why not come down one of these times, take a set, and, see if it works for later. And I think, the drivers who are well above the cut line are in more of a luxury to do that. Obviously, no points risks to them tonight to missing the chase altogether. So I think, some of these guys towards the front, a Coffey, a Murray, a Cox, even a Corey Moore or a Timothy Harper, one of these guys up front would be more likely to try it than, say, a Blaine Wilson, a Kenny Reel, Mark Sanchez, one of those guys down towards the cut line. I think they will stay safe and, again, try to look towards the end of the race and not be as aggressive now, and obviously try to maximize their points as well. For the guys up front, why not? If we're going to get bursts like this, why not come down and see if you can write something down in the notebook for later on your pit stop?
So with that being said, 29-lap run coming up here, if we stay green, of course. What's proven to be a pretty hard race to pass in so far. Alex Coffey's led 29 of 30 complete so far for that reason. Harper, Murray, Cox, Moore up in the top 5 for the restart. Your biggest droppers so far, Cornette, who spun, and Sean Rogers, who ended up having an extra few moments in the pit lane, apparently. Just about all set to fly for the Van Lowy Stickers restart zone. Here we go. Green, green, off and away. And we're back underway with Coffey clear.
It feels like restarts are going to be the common storyline of when you can gain the most track position. And we saw Cox and Gallimore and Owens really have to work for it when this race got singled out last time around. If you want a bunch of spots, you got to get them in the first few laps and then set at it to work one car at a time and try to get spots again very slowly. Owens trying to take advantage outside of Gallimore. That is for the 6th position on the racetrack. As they work back to turn 1 again, Cox up the racetrack. He wants to run the second lane as well. More drivers trying to experiment early in these runs, trying to run the second lane and make it work as Cox takes a look on 3rd place, Alex Murray. Here comes the 0-0.
Able to shuffle, and here comes the look for the 0-0. We have trouble in the back, some scattering about. Garcia's in the grass. We have no caution, though. We stay green, and Garcia's off and away from the green stuff.
Oh, man, what a tough break for Nico Garcia. Was running just inside the top 10 around Blaine Wilson when this happened. And for him now, he loses all that track position, and he does not even get the benefit of a caution flag either, like we saw a moment ago. Back to the front. Cox inside of Murray. Can he complete the pass here off turn 2? No. Had to jump in the binders behind Timothy Harper. We'll have to reset here for turn 3, but again, Cox making the inside line work, but now he misses turn 3. We saw Cornette do this a moment ago before the spin. Cox does it there, and Murray capitalizes and keeps the spot.
Some good battling so far, at least off the jump. The 0-0 has been pretty solid. Remember, one of the major things we've seen this season is, especially for the BMP camp, those cars get better after 30, 40 laps. That popped up at Iowa, that popped up at North Wilkesboro. There is a chance of that tonight. There's a reason we've seen drivers like Rogers do well in those types of races once we get to the long runs in those events, and why Rogers won both of those races. His teammate in Cox has the upper hand for now, but it feels as though whatever base they've been using has clicked for saving Goodyear Eagles.
And another one of their cars just entered the top 10 for the first time. Chris Vinson runs 9th, and he is slowly reeling in this group. That's the black and yellow Chevy right back behind Brandon Fetterplace. So make 4 of their Chevrolets inside the top 10 early in this one. Cox to the outside of Murray now, goes the opposite direction. Again, will make an attempt at 3rd. This is where his car has been better, is up on that first dash line, a lane and a half off the bottom of the racetrack. He'll drive hard off turn 2. Murray pinned to the inside. Cox giving him nowhere to go, no way to arc the corner. It'll be most notable over here on turn 4. Cox can have the wider drive off. Murray has to shorten up his exit, and Matt Cox makes the pass, move him to 3rd. And here comes William Owens. He's worked up to these 4 cars at the front of the field. I wanted to mention it when drivers heard they had unlimited tire sets. It favors William Owens. He can come down and take a set every time. He's been so good on short runs this year as Cox looks for 2nd on Harper.
Still looking and trying to rip the spots away. The outside coming into play for the 0-0. Now he's alongside for the lead nearly. The Bears machine in the midst of football season, looking to rumble and stumble its way up to the front. Just about indeed now is clear for the 2nd position. And Matt Cox is rumbling his way forward with under 20 to go on the stage.
Oh, man, almost got in the back of Alex Coffey right there. Going into turn 1, had to work way up the racetrack, did Cox, and it's almost going to pay off for him. He drives off the top, goes right to the bottom for the lead. Here to turn 3, Cox, big drive off, contact. 0-0 and 54, door to door there. Harper has to jump in the binders and turns Cox around. Matt Cox sideways through the grass. Caution flag for the 2nd time, and it's the Bears Chevy we were just talking about.
Caution flag is out on the Speedway in Stage 1, brought to you by Collegiate Football Simulation League, the top collegiate simulation league. Create your legacy by visiting collegesimleague.com today. That got physical, didn't it, through that battle for the race lead?
Yeah, absolutely it did. And we're going to better look at it here if there was, in fact, contact. I know there's contact there with the 0-0 and the 54, but I'm wondering, was Cox already out of shape? No, he was not. Timothy Harper was trying to stay off Matt Cox, and sounds like maybe Matt Cox was trying to give the lead back to Coffey after the contact there in turn 3. Obviously felt it was a little too much, overdrove the corner, and was attempting to race the ethical way, if you will. And sometimes when that happens, you jump in the binders, there's a car behind you, and off and away goes Matt Cox. This is from earlier, Garcia inside of the top 10 at the time, and there was contact there with him and Blaine Wilson. That did not draw the caution, but it got physical back around that spot as well.
Physicality at its finest. Here's a look once again. And again. Yeah, that time. Great save from the orange and teal machine, but that looked like a little bit of a come up maybe from Garcia, at least to me. But that in turn, all its cascades into caution precautions. Now starting to pop up a bit with the shorter runs. This time, though, half the field elects to pit, half does not. And everyone who pit did take 4 tires, so now it's the question, how is this going to go on the short run?
Oh, yeah, again, you know now that you can come down and take a set whenever you want to, so you know you're going to have a chance to have new rubber on the race car every time we get a caution flag if you so choose. And in the short run, all that means is you can push harder than we're used to seeing cars be able to push in these early 2 stages. You're going to be able to push 110%, especially in a run that's going to be 14 laps to the end of the stage. And you know you're going to come take another set in 14 laps. You don't have to conserve the tires even for stage 2. So it's 110, 120%, really kind of driving past the limit a little bit, trying to maximize every stage point. That's what I was just talking about William Owens doing before Matt Cox tried to get to the race lead. And Owens, again, is benefiting nicely off the extra tire sets. We talked about the short run speed on his race car this year. He'll restart 4th right here in the 30. Again, could be a huge, huge points night for him if he's able to capitalize.
Ready for the restart pretty soon, as keep in mind your Victory Designs pole award winner, Alex Murray, currently in the 3rd position. Lining up right behind those of Harper and Coffey, 2nd and 1st respectively. After the slide around, the first 3 are still dig machines. They need to throw William Owens and 0x Sim Racing equipment. Top 4 off the way for the Van Louis Stickers restart zone. Not a great start from the outside from Harper, but Owens is looking to dig and try and show that he knows how to drive this track, and he makes contact.
Yeah, how about William Owens on the start, but behind them it is madness. Vincent, center of 3 wide there on the start as the bottom lane got stacked up. They'll settle it down to 2 wide here off turn 4, but man, back around him and Rogers and Cornette and Reel, that was almost a mess on this opening restart. Here as we close up stage number 1. Owens still outside of Harper, trying to battle alongside the 23, but loses a little bit there in 1 and 2, and Harper's back alongside him for now. It's the Alex and Alex show that continues to run 1-2. Coffee and Murray. Again, 2 wide most of the way back from there. Vincent, as high as he's run all night, he looks for 7th. Another guy as high as he's run all night, Blake Hawshield, car 38. First time we've called his name in the top 10. First time we've called Johnny Shade's name in the top 10 right behind them. Red, white, and black on that Toyota. 1 car in the wall as Chris Cornette reemerges on our screens as the battle for 3rd continues.
All sorts of chaos. There's 3 wide with the fresh tires. No wall contacts, though. Gallimore was a part of those. But we have yellow. That's where the contact was. Remember we just talked about was getting 3 wide? Well, it is pretty clear in a lot of cases that didn't work out.
No, not exactly. We talked about 3 wide with Vincent and company on the restart. We got away with that one. The racing gods don't typically let you get away with it twice. And back here around a few of the cars towards the tail end, man, I wonder if Matt Cox is involved in this set. The 0-0 there involved. Wayne Bowen, I know, is. Jeff Chandler's involved in this as well, possibly Medina and a couple of others. But this is back around Matt Cox, and that is indeed the 0-0 of Cox. Man, 2 in a row. The guy that was running 2nd a moment ago, as he comes right up off the corner, I guess right into the side of, I want to say that's the Chandler machine. Medina is involved. There's another car up ahead that's also involved. Man, for Matt Cox, tough break there.
See right there. Yeah, Jeff Chandler was running a little bit low. That everyone stacks on in. Chandler's time in this series, 2 DNFs and 2 starts. Here's Kenny Reel. You were talking about some of the troubles off the start. Let's see what happened to the 99.
Again, it's going to come where the lanes stack up a little bit. Oh, he jumps right down on Kyle Holden's nose and cuts the nose off a little bit there. I want to say this is something similar that happened last week. I remember we had an incident involving Kenny Reel and somebody last week. I wonder if this was similar to what happened last week at Iowa. We got away with one up front and not so much at the back. And as we come back live, I want to talk about some strategy. Top 7 stay out. Bowie, Treat, Christensen, Cox, Sanchez. Well, now Greg Carr will come to pit road, so make it 6. Bowie, Treat, Christensen, Cox, Sanchez, and Chris Davis all stay out. within 10 laps of stage as well. So perhaps factor that in.
Getting all set to roll here pretty soon. So remember, usually it's within 10 laps for the stage rule we talked about for this. I don't know how that's going to go in terms of the ruling plan. But Brennan Bowie is your current leader with all this, with some of the pit stops. This field's been kind of flipped around, hasn't it, with everything that's gone on, and Bowie is the one in front for now.
Yeah, again, top 6 on the racetrack opting to stay out. Everybody else came down to get tires, including Greg Carr, who stayed out for a lap. But Bowie, Treat, Christensen, Cox, Sanchez, and Davis all opt to stay out here. Remember, Matt Cox was just involved in a pair of incidents and stays out to continue to run fourth. First time we've seen a number of these other cars at the front. Talked about Bowie struggles early. Jim Treat, Christensen. Man, some guys that need some points tonight. Christensen and Sanchez up here inside the top 6. This could be massive for them if they can maintain this track position.
So we're just about set to restart things here. Again, coming up to 6 to go from the original distance of the stage. But right now, Bowie is getting the chance to control this field for the first time today. Off and away. And a good start for car 35.
Oh man, and behind them, Coffey puts Sanchez in the middle of the blender, 3 wide there into turn 1 as he makes through by trouble. Murray's in the outside wall. He almost stacks up the entire field behind him. Somehow we get away with it, but the pole sitter's got damage. He was in the fence off turn 2.
Still, we stay green with all that chaos. Right now, Matt Cox amongst those up at the top 3. Still trying to zip his way through, but Coffey is the first to pit as they battle their way with less than 5 to go in the original distance.
Yeah, Bowie leads off the corner, but Coffey is closing and closing quickly. He's going to have to negotiate Chris Davis next. And again, the new tires starting to come in behind him. Harper, Owens, Gallimore, Cornett, all on new tires. Murray is as well. Again, just got the fence a moment ago in the all-purple 22 as he tries to recover from that. We'll take a look at that as Matt Cox makes the pass for third on Christensen on our live feed. Here's Murray. Man, shatters the rears badly there off turn 2. And look at a couple of big hits there for Sanchez and at least one other car there off turn 2 that got involved in that one. Coffey all the way up to Davis, but now is stalled just a little bit and starting to stack up the new tires behind him.
Yeah, and all this is to say, this field completely jumbled up. This is the mixture of types of chaos we expect to see in our series at a track like this, obviously. But hey, as they all zip about here, remember, it was Coffey at the top of the caution that had previously been the one at the front of the field. This 54 machine continuing to try and steady itself out and try and find a way to claw its way forward. So far, the tire difference hasn't really come into play as we're on lap 60.
Oh, Paul Gallimore thinking about a big move out back of the leaders right now. Almost 3 wide staggered there off turn 2. Thought better of it as he backs out just a little bit on exit from Owens and Davis. That was almost 3 wide there. Again, about 7 cars deep in the field. Cox putting pressure on Jim Treat. This would be for P2 as lap 61 will go on the board and bypassing it. No caution yet. Tells you the stage was over with the last caution flag. So drivers staying out to try to set themselves up for stage 2. And so far, so good for Bowie. Treat starting to feel the pressure from Cox, and soon Alex Coffey will be on the scene as well. Here's Cox for second. As Coffey gets up to Christensen, that would be for the 4th spot. That's where the tires are. Coffey, Harper, and Owens, who has trailed those 2 dig cars as Treat works up, man. Almost a crash there.
Able to keep it clean for there. And as you can tell, we are going through, so can confirm they ended the stage early. That was close to the mark initially for the top of the caution. That's why there was the hit station there. So we can definitely say that 54 picking up 10 stage points to start things off for the night. This stage going to be about 10 laps longer. You're going to have to manage those tires a little bit longer in general here as a result.
Manage them for now. If we get another couple of caution flags, it would be very similar to stage 1. You can come down and get a new set every time. Again, with unlimited tire sets rather than limited what we're used to at these tracks, you don't have to worry about using your last set before that last stage. So the drivers towards the front of the field, you can run hard now, anticipating we may get another caution later in the stage. Matt Cox starting to draw up to the race leader, Brandon Bowie, as Coffey's to the inside of Treat. That's the battle on your screen for the 4th position. So the tires are up to the 4th spot as Coffey makes a half pass here on Treat, with Harper and Owens, and now Gallimore trying to follow him all the way through. But the battle for the lead starting to heat up. Matt Cox using a higher lane now. He's up 2.5 lanes now at the bottom. He'll drive right underneath Bowie here at the line. Battle for the lead. Here's the Bear Chevy again.
See how much Jim Treat trying to dig himself on the outside. Indeed, right now, all this is to say, William Owens is a man possessed, I guess you could say, on the drive today. One of those who pit the previous caution. He's digging left, right, center. This is, if he can keep it out of trouble, in line for what would be his drive of the season, I think you could argue, because it's at a short track especially. We're seeing this 30 speed really pop up tonight.
Well, again, a short track where we've had a lot of short runs so far, and that has been the strength for William Owens this year. He's had really, really good raw short run speed under that precision-powered entry and continues to work towards the chase spot because of it. This could be a night where, yeah, it wasn't intentional to give drivers unlimited tires, but again, it could fall into the lap of a driver like Owens. Speaking of, almost an immediate commentator's curse. He almost spins it. They're off turn 2, has to recover. He'll lose a couple of spots. More importantly, he'll save the race car.
Yep, indeed. Right now, this is obviously to where you need to be so careful on the throttle with the difference of the gear shifts, of course, with 4th and 5th gear. Mind you, Wayne Bowens had to park it, by the way, Dawson. We mentioned the tech issues he was dealing with. Well, he got the connection flag, and he immediately said, if I'm going to get a connection flag, I'm not going to run the laps. He left the session right afterwards. So, we are down 3 cars so far tonight. We're down to 25 running. As we continue to look at some of the aero drivers like Fenner Place trying to dig on the inside just outside the top 10 right now.
Recovering William Owens. He tries to recover from the half spin just a moment ago. Speaking of recovery, Alex Murray back on the drive in the purple 22 just ahead of Owens, trying to make up for his hit to the outside wall just a few moments ago. He is back inside of the top 10 in the 9th spot, trying to get another couple spots here from Rogers and the backsliding Jim Treat, who's actually going to play pick. Rogers got in the back of him there off turn 4, and Murray says, thank you very much, I'll take 2 for 1. And tries to go around both of them, although a moment of stagger 3 wide. But Murray drives away, and we'll get 2 spots now up to 8th for the pole sitter in Alex Murray. Another couple of cars again, we talked about Jeff Chandler being out. The other one is Nico Garcia. Saw him again on the racetrack tonight. He made it 56 laps and called it an evening, taking that number 8 machine behind the wall. So a tough early end to the night for Nico Garcia.
Hearing Matt Cox is flying, and that's because I feel like he's really saved the tires enough to do this. He's right now running 21.8, which is what 4 others are doing on the racetrack. But here's the big thing. He's got the clean air advantage to run the line he wants, to run as smooth as he wants until lap 120 if it stays green. Compare that to, say, an Owens. We're still dealing with the turbulent air.
Yeah, again, such a tough part of this Gen 7 race car to negotiate when you're not in clean air, is trying to find any bit of clean air you can to rotate the car through the center. And at a short track that is so tire incentive like Richmond, you want to be able to turn through the center, really arc your corner, especially as aggressive as you have to be driving through the center. You want that car to rotate, and between the tire wear and the dirty air, it's very, very tough to get that car to turn unless, again, it is dialed in which case we know Matt Cox's car is dialed in. Alex Murray appears to be in the same boat as well in the 22. Another car that appears to be is Timothy Harper. We've not talked a ton about him compared to the Alex and Alex show that's been 1-2 for most of the race. Harper just bypassed Coffey a moment ago. Now looks for a spot on Christensen. Timothy Harper now looking to lead the Dig Brigade if he's able to get by the yellow PayRVA Camry right in front of him.
Christensen, who needs points, mind you, going to let him on by there. No major fight there, but Harper does have 7 top 5s this season. He Qualified up front. Usually when he qualifies up front like this and stays out of the early trouble, he can usually pick himself up a good point stay. We're seeing that. Cornette, meanwhile, he's increased his amount of leagues that he's ran in recent weeks, I should say. More seat time, if you will, for Cornette has paid off more and more as he's gotten stronger and stronger as the campaign's gone on, and has really figured out this car as you see Murray getting his way through traffic behind him.
Alex Murray is up to the 6th spot now on his recovery drive. Sorry, 7th spot, right behind Cornette, who runs in the 6th spot. So next up for Murray is the red and white Camry of Cornette. And he's done it by running the outside lane primarily, although Cornette's going to steal that lane away from him here over in turns 3 and 4. And for Cornette, I think you've seen that in real time as the speed has gotten better over the last 2 weeks. I mean, just here on Wednesdays, if you've watched him, certainly has made a big-time gain in just raw speed. He'll go for 5th here on Nigel Christensen. But for Cornette, what started as a good season, certainly one of the sensations so far early in the year, has really come on with the speed throughout the course of the race here as we reach the end portions of the regular season. Up front, the gap has disintegrated for Matt Cox. All of a sudden, what was a 6-10 lead just a few moments ago is now about 3 car lengths here down the back straightaway, as here comes the points leader. Brandon Bowie has worked way up the racetrack on both ends. He's using that big-time drive off to pick up the gap. It's down to 2 car lengths, 1st to 2nd. Here comes Bowie.
You can see Bowie try to use the higher groove, get a little bit of a cut. Gets himself nearly to the bumper, but still waits patiently. Bowie did lead laps with the strategy to start this one off, but it seemed to pick up the long run, saving the Goodyear Eagles right now. And we know Bowie can also strike on these types of runs. The last time Bowie won, though, you had to go back to Chicagoland. That was all the way at the start of July, just about, where he was back-to-back there and at Sonoma. It's been a bit more of a roller coaster since for the now independent.
Yeah, obviously we talked about that storyline last week in Iowa in terms of the now being an independent portion of it, but still the points leader, still a considerable lead at that. So again, has the luxury to save a little bit and focus on continuing to rack up trophies, continuing to rack up race wins in this one as he looks for the race lead. Timothy Harper is entering this conversation also. Those 2 dig cars, 3rd and 4th, Harper and Coffey, both running consistently about a 10th better than our 2 race leaders over the last several laps. They'll do so again right here. Coffey specifically a 10th and a half better than the race leaders, at least as they run right now. So the dig car is starting to pick up on the long run here. As we get later into the night, the lights are on, the track is changing. Seems to be favoring the dig cars right now on the racetrack. 2 fastest cars, 23 and 54.
Yeah, you can see just how tight things continue to stay up at the front with the various different windows. Mind you, the highest on those who took a 2-tire stop or a fuel-only stop of any of those equations of 7 seconds is Gallimore, as you mentioned. So, he'll run himself in the midst of the pack around that 8th position for now. But as you can see, Harper is ready to chip away. He's running a little bit quicker than the leader right now. His average is half a tenth or so quicker.
Again, last time by, it started to plateau just a little bit as those 2 cars get into dirtier air right behind these 2 leaders in Bowie and Cox, especially with Cox running down towards the bottom. That's where these 2 Camrys have wanted to run on this late run, or in this mid-stage run, rather, of Stage 2. They've wanted to run down there where Matt Cox is, although Harper fights right through any dirty air he's in to get past Brandon Bowie. Can he clear up here off turn 4? He can. Does Bowie cross over? You bet he does, or does he? He leaned for a second like he was going to lunge back out of line, thinks better of it. Harper on through for a second, overcooks turn 1, but will make the pass, and now it's Coffey's turn. Dig Camry's really catching on. Another car starting to catch on is Cornette, one of his best laps of the race last time at 22:28.
Yeah, and they're picking up steam, it feels like, now with those who have those slightly fresher Goodyears. The problem is, though, it's almost to the point where everyone's equalized with less than 30 to go on the stage. Mind you, even the 11 is in the midst of battles. Even he's picking up steam. Remember Alex Murray? He'll drop his way down the order through this 2nd stage, brought to you by RS Button Boxes. realistically speaking, the biggest movers of the day are not even in the top 10 right now. Those being Kyle Holden and Chris Davis. And Holden, of course, we talked about the storyline with Barry Sanders stepping away for the time being. He's definitely kept himself very busy, Holden has, obviously, tonight, in terms of making sure everything's secure for the running of these races still, as the boss man currently deals with a hard time involving family members at the moment.
Yeah, obviously having to take on the extra responsibility for Kyle Holden, but it's not really phased him much in terms of the on-track. He's currently running back around the 13th position. In fact, is in a battle with Blaine Wilson for that spot right behind the driver we're on board with now, Chris Davis. You'll look back there at his Aero teammate back there. The only two cars, it appears, that are running for Aero 1 tonight in this race are running nose to tail now over in turn 3 and 4. In fact, they're about to look 3 wide for a moment there as they both tried to go around William Owens, who has backslid a little bit as this run has gone on, has the 30. This is where they can start to bite him. And we have trouble on the racetrack somewhere. A number of cars have just crashed. More Catalano car, Hochschild Treat have all crashed. It's not yet drawn the caution flag, but a number of cars, I think, have had some problems at somewhere around the racetrack.
Yeah, not sure what's happened there, because I think right now some of the drivers definitely lost a few seconds here, broken up, like Shade, Catalano, Sanchez, Medina at the back of the field. But I don't think anybody actually went sideways in that sequence in what you're referring to. They all look okay. But obviously, some of these drivers had massive drop-offs in what you're talking about in the 23-second range to have that happen. You're referring to, Dawson.
Yeah, it could be. It could also be a timing and scoring error as well. It saw a number of cars have issues there. Obviously an anomaly there as we started to see more listed off, at least on my end. So, again, apologies for that. But looked like it was a significant incident back around the Treat and Company machines. Up front, another pass, and one of the fastest men in virtual Richmond. I talked about it earlier. Along comes Sean Rogers. I wondered when this car would kick into gear. We got about 35 laps into the run, and Rogers is now one of the fastest men on the racetrack. Another one of those cars is Alex Coffey. He just bypassed Timothy Harper in turn 1. He now runs second as Rogers tries to run all 3 of these cars down.
Indeed, and right now, Rogers, the king of the long run, is running even quicker than Cox is. Look at the difference. It's only about a half a tenth to a tenth, that time near 2 tenths. But the 44 has a chance to maybe get in that conversation, and it disrupts some of the ebbs and flows up front. Yet again, going to be a factor by stage 3, obviously.
That long run coming in stage 3, 180 laps compared to these 60 lap stages here. More like 50 in stage 1, 70 in stage 2 with that caution breaking up the opening stage at the 50 lap mark. Dig cars running down Matt Cox, but Rogers continues to shorten up this gap just a little bit. Last time by, almost a tenth and a half quicker than the leader, almost 2 tenths quicker than Harper was the Rogers machine. Back here, battle for 5th. Cornette inside, Bowie outside, as Chris Cornette tries to grab a spot in the top 5. These two have driven away from the rest of the top 10, Gallimore, Fetter Place, Murray, and now Holden, who's gotten all the way to 10th. All of a sudden, in the last 8 laps, he went from 14th to 10th for Holden as he's bypassed a number of cars to get into stage point position. Cornette, can he complete the pass on Bowie here? Not quite, but looks like Bowie may let him have it here into turn 1, move Cornette to P5.
Cornette continues to march his way forward on the strategy. Mind you, not expecting fuel to come into play, obviously, in the stage, but the race lead is getting interesting. Remember Coffey and Cox? Well, they've gone side by side. Here comes Coffey. He's looking to try and set it up the inside. Can he get around the 00? Gets a little nose in front at the very least. Look how much that Chevy, though, is trying to defend on the brakes.
And Cox really cooked it there into turn 3, trying to maintain the position. Not going to be enough. New leader in virtual Richmond, Alex Coffey, the orange and black 54. He'll go right to the point. That drags Harper into this conversation as those two were side by side. And look at how much the gap back to Rogers has closed up over the last 5 laps or so. He is closing in. The question will be, through the dirty air and the tire wear, does he have enough time to get to the now leader Alex Coffey? Or will Coffey pull away to win another stage and sweep the stages tonight in the 54? Rogers is closing in, but it's a matter of time. Only 16 laps to get the job done to get to these leaders. But he's on scene. We'll see what he can do with it.
And we're seeing just how much this difference on the setup again coming into play as time ticks away. Less than 15 laps to go here in stage number 2. Luis still attached to Cornette meanwhile. See up in the front the difference. Look at Harper. He's ready to take a spot as well.
And Timothy Harper, a really good night so far for that red, white, blue PayRVA Camry as he is looking for the second spot. And again, he talked about the 7 top 5s, trying to make it 8, trying to make it a number of podium finishes this year as well. And for him, as he inches closer to a chase spot, right as we talk about it, he gets in the wall. Rogers into him. They both keep it together, similar to what we saw happen to Alex Murray just a little while ago with a stack up. After getting to the outside wall, both cars keep it together. But now, instead of going to second, Harper will drop to 4th as Rogers attacks him here to turn 1.
See that send again, and remember, Rogers is on the same cycle as Coffey and Co. on the tires. So that would explain where some of the speed difference is on the setup. There's a strong chance that Rogers gets the second, but I don't know about the lead in this stage. Next stage is where you'll have to take the notes, obviously, that we touched upon earlier on. As the championship continues to get interesting, though, we're talking about a couple races to go after this. We touched upon that with the schedule at the top of the show coming into tonight. This has kind of been the shorter track gauntlet, if you will. 3 straight short tracks in the summertime before we head to a super speedway to close things on out. And obviously, this is the true test for a lot of the builders. Is this the part of the series where it's that low downforce, if you will, with that spoiler that really tests you as a driver?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to nail the balance because, you know, you can adjust on it as the race goes on, but especially on a night like tonight where we go from day to night, the track changes. And last week at Iowa went the other way. The track got hotter as the race went on. You've got to nail the balance so that the driver is not having to overcompensate during the race, not having an ill-handling race car that they can't do much with once they get into the cockpit. There are a number of ways you can adjust inside the cockpit once you come to pit road, but again, you want to nail the balance early, keep track position. It's been such an important part of this car. Battle for second as we hold off that conversation, because here is Rogers to the outside of Cox. The legend of long run king Sean Rogers continues as he looks for a spot inside the top 2 with just 8 to go in stage 2.
Here we go. That 44 we talked about was going to make this pass likely. And it's coming into play with the gap already almost 2 seconds for the lead. Going to be too far to get up there unless something massive happens. But Rogers is able to bring that fresh look machine up in the order. What's been a really good stretch for car 44. And has him potentially in the conversation to get a decent bumper for that 6th spot of the point standings.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rogers on by for the 2nd spot. Harper, by the way, is recovered in the 4th spot and kind of pulled back away from Cornette, who's starting to reel these guys in. Another group of cars I wanted to hit on, by the way, as we get later in this stage. I know Brandon Bowie was off of the strategy with the tires, but a couple of cars that nailed it in terms of the cars that are on fresh tires are the Kyle Holden and Brandon Fetterplace machines, running 6th and 8th right now. Some of their best laps of the night compared to the leaders coming over the past 10 laps or so. They have driven both inside the top 10. Holden was 14th about 30 laps ago. He's up to 8th, plus 18 for him. We talked about the gains Davis has made as well. A couple of these aero cars as the long run kicks in. And I'm talking 50, 60 laps on a run as this stage gets later. So interesting, a point for stage 3. Potentially a couple of those aero Chevrolets are cars to watch. Fetterplace and Holden, some of the fastest cars on the racetrack here late in stage 2.
Down to the final 4 laps of the stage. Indeed, it's been good if you're up 18 in the case of the 97. That's a car that's going to be potentially in the conversation for stage 3, possibly for top 5. Cornette still in the top 5, speaking of. Harper went from potentially battling for the lead to dropping right into the clutches of the 0X machine.
How about Chris Cornette here late in the stage, coming back to 2 laps to go. He's gotten on his horse. I think he sees Brandon Fetterplace coming, wants to make quick work of Harper to get away from the 34, who really, again, has picked up the lap times over the last 15 laps or so. So Cornette comes up to Harper, Fetterplace comes up to both of them, and then it's Holden, who just eased by Brandon Bowie a second ago for 7th. So move him plus 19 on the night up to P7. He won't probably get any further. But with a lap and a half to go in the stage, Cornette trying for one more on Harper. He may have a couple shots at him here.
Indeed, and you see the setting up the inside on the final lap of the stage now. Cornette not able to make the poke. Now able to defend to the inside, and there's Sin deep to the corner. Cornette getting aggressive with it. He wants that spot. Side by side they work as Coffee secures stage number 2. Coming out of the corner, already took the green-white checker over Rogers. Cox, Cornette takes the top 4. They also throw Harper in the top 5. Fetterplace, Holden, Bowie, Gallimore, Murray, the top 10.
Man, I think a really, really interesting thing to watch for this extended Stage 3, which will feature that extra long green flag run before we get to a pit stop, is just how good the Cornette, Fetterplace, Holden cars were at the end of that stage. I'll tell you, another car that came on a little bit late as well was Kenny Reel. He ran some of his better laps of the long run there at the end also. So a couple more cars towards the back half of the top 15 to potentially watch in Stage 3 when we get an extra long green flag run in this third stage.
Yes, indeed, and here we go. Everyone's already peeled their way down pit road. Take some service here. Everyone will come in and probably take the 4 tires and fuel, and now it becomes the game plan on where we go from here. Time I don't think is going to be a factor right now. We've gone green long enough that there's still an hour 40 in that regard. But obviously, it's going to be very critical to make sure you don't have tire issues. They were huge at Iowa before.
Yeah, obviously talking about the time, it still is going to be somewhat close. Again, with still about 180 laps to run, 160 laps with several cautions. Last night took about an hour and 15 to an hour and 20 minutes. So not a ton of excess time. But in terms of tires, again, you've got as many as you want. Might as well come down and grab them, and everyone takes the opportunity to do so right there as we gear up for the longest green flag run, I think, of the season in terms of percentage of the race. At least one of them for sure over half of the race distance here in Stage 3.
Yep, indeed. So all this is to say, Coffee, Rogers, and Cox getting all geared up at the front of the field as we prepare for this stage. I think it's a good time to maybe dial him up. He's already swept the stages here tonight, here in this one. Good time to catch up with him real quickly. Alex Coffey, this is the broadcast booth. Do you have a quick copy?
Yes, sir, I got you.
You've been in control in stages 1 and 2 so far, but the pressure's building up behind. What's the game plan for Stage 3 with those with the long run sets already saying hello?
Just kind of take better care of it. I was kind of in dirty air most of that run, so just pace yourself for a long run and it should be fine.
Indeed. So on that quick note, once you get back to your team, we're already at 1 to go.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it.
Alex Coffey goes back to his camp. Quick thoughts right there. I think he's pretty much in focus mode with the way you heard it there, because Coffey, it's been a bit since he's broken through for a victory, hasn't it? Michigan back in June was the last time he took a checker.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while since he swept the stages, too. Something we got used to seeing him do early in the season, but also last season towards the end of the year as well.
Yes, indeed. We're ready to go. Green, green, green. Back underway.
Coffey got the jump down to turn 1. He'll get away from Cox and Rogers, the BMP teammates, who now battle for the second spot in a bit of a shuffle off of pit road. You heard Coffee say he's got to take better care of it. You can't take too well care of it, though, with Rogers bearing down on him here in turn 3. You got to be careful to build a gap, knowing that the long run is going to kick in here later on in this extended long run especially. We know how good Rogers has been on those longer runs. He bears down on the leader here to turn 1 as Cornette looks for third on Matt Cox. The 84 shot out of a cannon here on this restart.
Indeed, and right now, you can see how much that 44 is going to try and line things up at the very least. Look at how that's going bumper to bumper. Rogers already trying to shuffle to the outside. He wants the lead now for the clean air. Can he get to the outside fully? No, he can't. Door slam shot.
And you do not want to give Sean Rogers clean air on a short track. The way that car has run over the past month and a half on these shorter ovals, on the long run, you do not want to give this spot up right now. A nightmare scenario for the rest of the field if Rogers gets to the lead right here. Reminder back to Wilkesboro. Here's the move to the outside. Remember what happened when he got to the lead in Wilkesboro? That race was all but wrapped up when Rogers got out front. He'll do so here in turn 3. Sean Rogers to the race lead for the first time here off turn 4.
Sean Rogers up to the front, and he makes that part easy. Now, it's the matter of saving the tires for the short track king of the summer. Gallimore trying to send it on the outside, by the way. That 11 machine, now that's on 4 tires, also looking pretty stout already.
Can we talk about these Beast Mode Performance Chevrolets? 3 of them now inside the top 5. Rogers, Cox, and Gallimore all inside the top 5. Oh, and Chris Vincent lingers inside of the top 10. All, or really 4 of their 5 cars, the 4 that are still running, all inside the top 10 spots on the racetrack right now in the early portions of the stage. Cox back around Cornette. That's for third. Also move Cornette back to fourth for the time being. And it won't be long before Gallimore challenges him. Look at the lunge up the outside for the Bumblebee 11 as he wants the spot from Cornette. The Beast Mode Chevys are on the move.
You can see just how much they're trying to shuffle. Cox trying to get around Coffee. A 0-0, keeping the fight up on the outside. Again, that inside doing pretty good on the front stretch. It's the back straightaway that we're seeing some of the separation. There's the clear by the 0-0.
Yeah, so move Matt Cox back to the third spot, rather to the second spot ahead of Alex Coffey. So now a 1-2-4 for the Beast Mode cars. Gallimore a bit of a slide. They're off turn 4 as he tried to put the pressure on the Dig eSports 54. And Cornette says, thank you very much. I'll jump back to the outside and try to make good on that. Get right back to the 4th spot. Cornette continues to be sporty. Then there's those 2 Aero Chevys that are 6th and 7th. I just talked about them a little bit ago. Fetter Place and Holden. They're in the spectator seats right now. They're watching this unfold in front of them, saving some equipment for later. And then some interesting cars points-wise. Kenny Reel runs 8th in the 99 for Redline. Then Vincent runs 9th. Then Bowie is the points leader. Then Greg Carr is 11th. He's worked into the conversation for a top 10 here.
Absolutely. Right now, this entire field's become a choo-choo train. The one part of the race in all this that I think is understated, Murray had a 40-second stop during that window that was under caution. The 22 has gone from strong start to solid medium or middle to what's turned into a disaster. He's already got rear end damage, the 22 does, for reference, off screen. So we've seen some drivers really take a plummeting over the course of this event. Corey Moore as well. You can throw the dig cam. As Gallimore and a couple others scrape the wall.
Gallimore's had a couple here on the early portions of this run. Was about to get third from Alex Coffey. Now has slid a couple of times. Once in turn 4, once in turn 2. And has dropped in behind Cornette right in front of Fetter Place and Holden. And yeah, a couple of cars have gone backwards. Alex Murray had worked as high as 6th on the last run, but has plummeted again back through the field. We talked about that damage, and now I'll have to recover once again. For Corey Moore was high as 4th on that opening run, as it was an early dig 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it's fallen all the way to 16th on this third stage, at least to this point. We'll see, again, a long ways to go in this race, still over half of the race distance left to be run. So a long time for those 2 drivers to recover, but again, you obviously started up front. Track position, clean air has been so important. To be back in the 15th or so spot, not ideal.
Yeah, exactly. The further you go back here at a track like Richmond, the harder it is to claw your way back up unless you have very good raw speed and a lot of time to play around with. The one advantage of that is we do have a lot of laps, so I guess there's that.
Well, more laps to experiment, more laps to adjust on the race car, especially in a long run like this. You're going to get a shot at it if this race stays green. If obviously we get a couple more cautions, you'll have some shots at it here in Stage 3 to switch the car up, to switch some things around and get the car driving like you want it to. That's the advantage of a longer race tonight, is more time to dial the car in, especially when we get into a long run here. Again, you'll know exactly what you need after about 110 laps pass. Gallimore right back to the back bumper of Cornette, trying to take another shot for fourth as he continues to recover from a couple of early slides in this third stage. Things have stacked up behind Cornette just a little bit. Fetter Place, Holden on scene. Vincent's driven up to this as he got around the Kenny Reel car a little bit ago. So move Vincent into this conversation. Dive by Gallimore, almost contact, 11:84.
Yeah, a little bit of dardiness and near contacts popping up again. Cornette has had that happen a couple times already. He's keeping himself out of trouble here with 157-ish to go. The entire line, for the most part, is running the same groove. Only 4 cars out of the race over the course of the night. The wild thing is, we only had the one major crash on the front straightaway. Every other incident that we have had, then basically single car spins or someone bouncing off a door, it feels like, this evening. It's been really clean for what we were at least expecting, I guess you could say.
And kind of the opposite in a couple of different aspects in terms of what we expected. Expected some more attrition and chaos than we saw last week at Iowa, and tonight it's just not materialized. Again, save for that one crash on the front stretch involving Jeff Chandler and Matt Cox and Wayne Bowen. But, other than that, pretty well. Again, some chattering in the rear tires, some spins, a couple of 2-car incidents here and there, some contact. The stack up with Alex Murray gave a couple of cars some damage, but the attrition factor certainly has not been there. The other aspect, it's kind of going against what we said earlier. I figured guys would experiment with the grooves, and early they did, as the track was still a little bit warm. As the track's cooled off, the sun's gone down, guys have stopped experimenting. Most everyone runs right down on the yellow paint, on the yellow line. There's not much variance in the lines amongst the drivers, and that has turned this race into a bottom feeder here. Passes very hard to come by early in Stage 3.
Indeed. Right now, amongst those in the battles, by the way, you see Bowie versus Real has popped up. That's for the 9th position, the first side-by-side in a little while. Everyone's staying single file outside of that as Bowie cleared by the 99. But, obviously, the interesting part of the next stretch here is, remember, Real was a part of those that needed points. He was in the part of the not safe zone. There's an error factor in all of this, too. I think we're kind of forgetting here is, where does Barry Sanders lie in all this? Because, remember, he's stepped away, as we talked about, but is still one of those above the cut line. If you look towards some of the point standings here, Dawson, it becomes the question, does a spot potentially open up with the 88's absence for the next few weeks?
Naturally, it probably would open up a spot, and it would just move the cut line up just a little bit. So instead of a 23-point buffer, it's 26, then 16 for Greg Carr, and so on, with a 3-point difference between Owens and Christensen. So really, if we want to think about it that way and move the cut line down a spot, at least again for the time being, still a buffer for Barry Sanders that'll last about 2 races at the rate that we're going. So, assume we head into Daytona, and we still, at that point, are unsure if we're going to have Barry Sanders in the field. It would move the cut line down down one more spot to around the Nigel Christensen and Sanchez machines rather than where it is right now. So it would move down a little bit, but those guys are so close together, it doesn't change the points picture a lot. It only changes it by about 3 points, which just, again, goes to show how close together that middle grouping of the chase standings are running. You
can see a few of the wall scrapes popping up again, though. Fetter Place, One of the Aero cars looking to go. See Holden trying to take a little bit of a poke. Just waiting to watch around his teammate, make sure there's no issues here as the 11 continues to play defense. Less than 150 laps to go here from Richmond. Bowie, by the way, has gotten around Vincent in the background. He is making some inroads here again. And we led earlier, we talked about that last run. Slipped back with the way the pit stop cycle went, but he seems to have something going here for the long run again.
Well, this has been something we've seen all year. We know the raw speed that Brandon Bowie can bring, and he has dominated his fair share of races. But there have been times this season where he has brought a car to the racetrack that maybe he just had to do some work on it, had to dial it in as the race went on. And we've seen him just get better and better and better as the race goes on. Chris Davis is another car that's kind of been in that same boat. And for Bowie tonight, we're seeing it again in real time. That car is getting better as the race gets later. Just past halfway, Bowie's starting to click on something now as he's maintained the top 10 this time around and tries to now get up towards where a couple of those Aero cars are running in Holden and Fetter Place. Those cars, by the way, are slowly starting to take off. We're slowly approaching the number where they started to get fast in Stage 2. You'd imagine that it would be the same case here in Stage 3. They are both working on Paul Gallimore for the 5th spot right now. Fetter Place will lunge. Holden says, I'm going to lunge one deeper, try to get the spot on Fetter Place. He tries to make it 2 for 1. Perhaps it's now he'll attack Gallimore.
You can see that right now with Holden. You can see a little bit of a scrape there and a little bit of a send for the 97. Holden able to jump up to the 5th position once again. And most of the field, it feels like a lot of these passes have come more so top line than bottom line tonight.
Yeah, again, it's somewhat similar to Iowa. It's somewhat similar to a lot of the short tracks we've seen this year. Moving up off the bottom, make a pass, go right back down to the bottom. It seems like has been the pattern ever since we went to Bristol earlier in the year back in the month of April. It feels like that even there, you wanted to make a pass, you go to the outside, you dive right back down to the bottom lane and start saving tire again. Just a little bit, as much as you can anyway, and it's the pattern yet again in this one tonight. So pair of Aero cars make the pass on Gallimore there. Gallimore backsliding the slightest bit. Next up for him would be Brandon Bowie. Behind him and a little further back, Harper on Greg Carr. This would be for 11th as Harper's comeback drive continues in the 23.
Yeah, it's pretty solid, the recovery here. In particular, all the dig cards have seen that for the most part. Some of the shuffle we've seen from the cycle after cycle after cycle. Kenny Reel just in front of him. We talked about his point situation a little bit. He stepped it up in the middle parts of the season here, Dawson. The 99, who came into this mostly known as a super speedway ace from the Money League scene that you work a lot in, has really picked up his speed on the 1.5 miles, the short track, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one of the guys that runs super speedways primarily, but in branching out, still does a lot of official racing and did before he ever made a start in this series. But obviously coming in, and then having to work on setups throughout the week as well, that was a bit new for that entire Redline group. And I think what we've seen is they are just bringing faster cars to the racetrack every single week. And that goes back to about the month of June that we saw the Redline cars really pick things up in terms of the raw speed under their equipment. Kenny Reel especially, as he continues to hold a top 10 spot right now, has put himself in the conversation to be one of the Redline entries that actually makes it into the chase. That would be a big achievement for that team. It's a still relatively young group at Redline, and if Kenny Reel can make the chase a big-time achievement, if he can hang on in the point standings, got a nice buffer coming into tonight, and happens to be one of the drivers around the cut line that is highest up in the running order right now as well.
It's been impressive what we've seen from him, absolutely. But that being said here, with 135 to go, we're almost at the green light on fuel. Obviously, this is kind of a little bit of ways out in terms of when you take the tires, obviously, for this set to make sure you can get to the end on gas. With the fall off only being 1.2 seconds so far, Dawson, there is a bit more flexibility, I guess you could say, on a call. because the equalization point is such that a lot of these times do equalize, so it seems after 30 laps, within 10 laps difference.
And again, I think we saw that really play out there towards the end of stage number 2, where a couple of cars on newer tires really gained a lot of spots and had a big time advantage early in the run, and then it faded completely, plateaued through the run 3 wide. Back here on Timothy Harper. Boy, Harper's gotten aggressive here in the early stages of stage 3 as he tries to get back where he was running inside of the top 3 earlier. Ran a 3 wide move there on a pair of BMP Chevys in Gallimore and Vincent. It staggers back out to 2. Almost trouble. Man, Kenny Reel and Paul Gallimore. That was close there off turn 4. That likely would have involved Alex Murray as well, who's worked into this conversation as he tries to get back into the top 10.
See just the shuffle again. Murray cutting hard to the inside. Still dealing with some of the scrapes on the front end and the back bumper damage. He is going to follow the hole. Force the 11 up the track as you see Harper stay on the back bumper of Vincent in the BMP entry. Look at that. Pit window's actually open. Wayne Wilson pit.
And this is something we saw last week at Iowa. Remember Corey Moore and Alex Murray's strategy last week early in stage 3 to pit way earlier than the rest of the leaders. And I'll tell you, given about 10 laps more of fall off, again, it plateaued similar to what it's done tonight. If the fall off had continued for another 10 laps, I think Alex Murray would have driven almost to a victory last week at Iowa with that strategy. And again, we see a Dig Esports car trying it. This time it's Wilson in the 18 trying to get off cycle.
Right now, that's going to become the question. Does anybody else take a massive gamble here on the call to go 50-50-50? That's another play where it's going to be dependent on if these tires fall off more than 1.2, 1.3 seconds. If it goes to 1.7, I think you absolutely might see a lot more people respond. This is the longest a lot of these drivers have even gotten on their tires, period, tonight in any run.
Yeah, again, we knew this coming in, this gauntlet of stage 3 that we talked about 3 times longer than either of our first 2 stages. And we had said when we get there, this race may change because we may not see a green flag run even close to what we'll see in that 3rd stage. And now you start to see it unfolding. It's going to give more time for comers and goers to happen, for those long run cars to kick in and be really good at the end of the run. We had just seen kind of the surface of that with the Cornet Fetter Place Holden cars back at the end of stage 2. I think you'll really start to see that kick in as we reach the tail end of a really long run here to begin stage 3.
Vincent doing good on the outside here in his fight, mind you, but mind you, some of the different drivers, it's not been a race fully controlled by one car until recently. Sean Rogers, 47 laps led. Coffey led multiple different times throughout the race for 76. Matt Cox had a period where he led for a little bit for 37. Bit broken up. Bowie had some leads, a couple of times broken up. It's only really until this part of the race where it's kind of gone back to the status quo of the short track racing with a 44. Again, it's taken off like a rocket, and the long run is now to the point where it is upwards of half a tenth quicker than anybody else on the track in most cases. That being said, is there anything you would do adjustment-wise to try and find anything to match up with this 44 with the way this long run is kind of gone for him in that BMP camp?
Again, at this point in the run, and you know, for me personally as a driver, obviously a little bit in a different boat than some of these guys, but you know, I tend to be very hard on the right front in this car especially. It's very, very easy to be hard on the right front, really the right sides as a whole. Even if you are trying to save the smallest slide, the smallest overcook of a turn in terms of the entry point, you can really burn off the right side tires. In terms of being hard on them, I would want to free the car up in the center of the corner, really rotate through the center is where a lot of these guys on the long run are finding big time speed, and that includes Sean Rogers. Some of his biggest gains on this run have come through the middle of either corner. He's able to rotate better than most anyone on the racetrack. So if I were someone running second on back, I'd want to free the car up in the center, really be able to rotate and dictate my run off, which is the most important part this car in the long run. Also trying to take some of the load off of the right sides, which continue to burn off of the race car. Notably, over the last few laps, Matt Cox has started to backslide. He's lost 5 or 6 tenths. Alex Coffey is reeling him in. Coffey was running some of his better laps of the run. Was actually a tenth faster than the leader a couple laps ago. Last time, a tenth slower than the race leader. Only cars on par right now. Fetter Place and Harper ran similar to Rogers. We'll see what it is this time by.
Well, this time by 24-4 for Rogers, 24-5 for Cox, 24-5 for Coffey, 22-4 for Cornett, a 4 for Holden, a 4 for Fetter Place. Christensen is in, so the 20 has come on down to try something different. And I guess why not when you're on the cut line, around that cut line, if you're the 20. Try something to get yourself a little bit of extra points to see if that works.
Well, and Blaine Wilson's only 100 points up. Again, with a super speedway looming, you've got to maximize your point standing as well. With, knowing that Kenny Reel and Greg Carr are both running right around the top 10. William Owens has had a pretty good night stage point-wise. So a few guys that are down around the cut line, running in decent spots right now, get offset. Try to do something different to vault yourself above them, to finish ahead of them, and make up for what you may have lost in the stage points department. So for Christensen, and again, even for Blaine Wilson, no surprise to me. In fact, again, you said why not, and I agree with it. Gain some track position here. I mean, Christensen came off pit road and has just blown by both the third and second place cars on new tires, so he's gaining time delta on the race leaders. So we look back to a continuing backslide for Paul Gallimore.
What's happened to his car all of a sudden? He was running solidly top 10, but it's now plummeted to 13th. Doesn't look like there's been any major handling woes. It just feels like the pace just has fallen off a cliff.
The car's gone sour on him. Again, it doesn't look like the handling is that bad, but again, there may be something awry inside the race car, or perhaps just burn a little bit too much tire, trying to be aggressive early in the run. Remember, he tried to make a few of the early passes and shattered the right side tires early in the run, had a couple of slides, had contact with the wall. So maybe a buildup of those things as well. This is what I was talking about with cars coming off pit road. Watch Wilson, how quickly he's able to dispatch these lead lap cars on new tires. Drives right by Harper, drives right by Bowie. That's going to make up some time delta when inevitably the leaders decide to come to pit road. What they have to hope for in Christensen and Wilson is that it is not too long before the leaders make that decision, or those time advantages will plateau for those two cars.
There's send for the 23. But really, as this all starts to get to the point where we expect the splitting of the middle, remember, if you split up the middle, we're talking within 20 laps, which is about 6 minutes or so, maybe 7, if you want to be really meme-tastical with it. There's, in terms of this measurement, if you will, it's obviously, with the way things have shuffled out here, a thought of, okay, now, how do we make sure to get that adjustment right? Because the thing is, too, not only is there potential of saving a few seconds on the tank, because some of the times you just see the tank fill up faster than the tires, but also, Dawson, the big thing's going to be, you got to keep up with the track, and one of the major things we haven't touched upon is the track's still pretty toasty for a night race. As look at that, Coffey's in.
And I was just going to mention it, JP. Alex Coffey gives it up here with 110 to go. So we said to split the stage in half, you'd have to go a little bit further. Coffey goes 20 laps prior to that number. And again, a pair of Dig eSports Camrys have already come to pit road in Wilson and Christensen, both on Dig 1 with Alex Coffey. So likely a team call to come a little bit early. Coffey waited a little bit longer. William Owens is going to pit this time by for 0x. That cycle may be starting a little earlier than we anticipated.
Yeah, this is a lot earlier. This is like the edge of the fuel window we were projecting coming into tonight, give or take here. Looks like Gallimore's going to come in, try and fix whatever that adjustment he had go sour on him. And this is only a 70-lap run. This would still be, in turn, a possibility where if you were to go 70 and 70, the map still doesn't equalize to where you expect a final stop yet, or the end of your run yet, unless everybody plans to run very long here, and this ends up being the the two-stopper, because the fall did reach 1.5 now.
Yeah, we're starting to reach into that bigger fall-off territory. I think it still will benefit some of the long-run cars that were really good at the end of Stage 2. I think a couple of the Aero cars are in that camp. Cornet is in that camp where they could afford to run an extra 10 to 15 laps here potentially, and use the tire advantage early in the run, but know that their cars kick in around the 50-lap mark, and would still have enough time, even with about 100 laps to go, to make up the ground that they lose here in the early portions of this run. A lot of cars, though, have already made their way down pit road or are working on that as we run right now. About 8 cars from what I'm seeing so far have already made a pit stop in the earlier stages of this cycle and are wanting to undercut it. And now you wonder, the question is, how long do some of these leaders go? Rogers still out. Cox still out. Several other cars still staying out. How much delta does this lose a couple of the race leaders? Some technical issues potentially for our host Justin Prince, so we'll continue to take you through this pit cycle as multiple other cars are on pit road. Johnny Shane's going to make a pit stop this time behind the 45. We'd just seen him go one lap down, so for Johnny Shade, he'll make a pit stop here, one of, if not his final one of the night, with 103 laps to go for him. But the leaders continue to stay out. In fact, I'm counting 15 cars, maybe 17 cars back to Chris Vincent that have not yet made what could be their final pit stop of the night. They are opting to run long, where a number of drivers have opted to run short. I said the gap between the two, gap between the pit stops, the window that we see drivers pit in, would be larger with a longer Stage 3. We are seeing it here happen in real time as drivers pit way early in this third stage. Drivers are opting to run way long in this third stage, where normally that window is about 15 laps apart. Now this one is going to be 30, 40, 50 laps difference between the first pit stops and the last one. Sean Rogers continuing to lead over Matt Cox. Chris Cornett now third. Holden fourth. Fetter Place is fifth. And again, a number of cars continue to stay on the racetrack, but a couple more have gone a lap down that I don't think have made their pit stops yet, including Medina and Sanchez. Potential minor disagreement on the racetrack. Kenny Reel outside, Johnny Shade inside, and off turn 4. It's actually not going to be Shade and Reel. Maybe Shade and Reel and Christensen. Oh, it is Shade and Reel. Wow. Johnny Shade backs up the corner. Kenny Reel in the back of him. And another disagreement for Kenny Reel. He had the one earlier with Kyle Holden, and now Johnny Shade. Some contact there.
Yeah, a little bit physical there on the braking zone. I don't think Shade was expecting Reel to maybe stay up there, but he was side by side. As we see him at the top of Alfonso's company replay. Everyone getting physical. Pit stop for Greg Carr this time. And a lot more of these drivers doing what we expected, extending the window compared to those who have taken the early stop. And right now, that's really separated a majority of the field. The gap 3 seconds for the lead. Holden, for reference, is your closest battle with Fetter Place.
Again, the Aero car starting to take off. Holden especially really taking off as we reach near the halfway point of this third stage. So again, Kyle Holden's car continues to get faster the deeper the run continues to get. Notably, I just watched Alex Coffey drive right on by the race leader Sean Rogers. As these guys near 85 laps on these sets of tires. Rogers back through Catalano, Sanchez, Medina, Vincent all still out, as well as Hauschild, as those cars are one lap down. Coffey just drove right on by, and I'm curious now what the final delta will be between those two cars. Coffey continues to run about a second quicker than the race leader every time he comes by the line. He's gaining a ton of delta. Now Rogers will reel that back in when he makes the pit stop. But how far back will he have to come from? How much wear will he have to put on his tires to get back into this one when he does come to pit road?
Yep, Hauschild coming on down has been towards the rear of the field much of the evening. A quiet night for the 34. But this obviously is going to counteract, as you were talking about, by the time everyone sees the pit stop cycles and it becomes a game on, okay, can you catch me? You see the difference. Already half a second to a full second a lap from Coffee compared to Rogers, as we expected on the difference here. That time to 8:10 says he was doing with lap traffic. But that's still 3/4 of a track distance that needs to be chewed away in the first place to get back up to the 44 and about where he was running on sequence.
We'll see when Rogers decides to come to pit road and see how much delta he's going to have to gain, because he continues to be adamant to stay out here, as do several cars. Back to about the 11th, 13th spot or so. Again, several of these guys towards the tail of the top 20 continue to run, but have been bypassed by cars that are now on new tires. See Coffee tearing his way through Treat and Catalano. Blaine Wilson was one of the first to pit. It's gained him a couple spots net after the pit stop. Same for Christensen. It's going to gain him a few spots if things stick for now. Remember, on the 10-lap older tires earlier in the race, JP, that time plateaued. It evened out. So for Christensen, perhaps a really good call. Wilson, 20 laps difference, maybe a little bit more, as the leader is on pit road. Here's the stop for Sean Rogers.
That brings us to about 90-ish to go on the call. Murray also came in, so a lot of the Arctic machines may respond here. Right now, the 44 up on the jacks, 187. It's about the split it up the middle strategy we were alluding to. Bowie just responded. He's also come down. The interesting thing is, Murray came into his box the same time as the 44 came out. That's the big difference for them, as everyone trying to work on the different traffic. That includes Timothy Harper nearly running to the back of Vincent. There goes Holden into pit road.
Yeah, Holden pitting here in the 97. He spun it. Kyle Holden spun it on the entry to pit road. The 97 went backwards, and all of that track position I talked about he had gained with that great long-run car vaporizes on the entry to pit road. Second straight week Holden's had a spin getting onto pit entry.
Yeah, that is not going to help him whatsoever, to say the very least. That's at least 5-10 second lost. Let's see this again. Oh, he actually hit the barrels too at the right rear, right? So that might be axle damage, maybe. That is definitely
identical.
more.
It's almost identical to what happened to him last week when he blew the right rear tire at Iowa. It's almost an identical situation. Man, a gut-wrenching moment for Kyle Holden, who had gotten as high as 4th. As he continues to sit on pit road, that almost confirms what you said there, JP. Suspension damage to him, as he's gone already multiple laps down to the race leaders as he sits in his pit box right now. A tough break for Kyle Holden. Meanwhile, the guys running really long here. Cox, Cornett, Fetter Place, Harper continue to stay on the speedway. A number of other cars, Corey Moore, Chris Davis, and Jim Treat, along with Mark Sanchez and Jose Medina and Chris Vincent. Those are the cars left to pit. Coffee's gotten by almost half of them, is up to 5th, and you see the delta there that Rogers is going to have to make up. It is huge.
Yeah, that is a massive gap that's going to work around. You're talking 24 seconds to Cox. Compare that, as you said, to Coffee. That is 20 seconds. But there's a chance that closes down at a good clip of 25, 30 laps. It's kind of the situation of being, I guess you could say, Christopher Bell this past weekend. If you look at some of the radioactives where it's like, I guess I'm the leader. Oh, the leaders are coming from that were on the previous strategy. I guess I will be passed now, I guess is the thought process. But that is all in the matter of you're going to have to play the game of cat and mouse yet again, Dawson, on tires to get up there. And you have to hope it stays green to finish your strategy in some of the cases.
Oh, and that's the tough part with short tracks, right? Is you're just never guaranteed that it's going to, especially now that so many cars are on different tire strategies. There's going to be a ton of speed difference in the field and braking point difference and center of the corner difference, to where you could have a couple of incidents happen and all of a sudden the strategy's out the window, and you've made this call to run long and to make it up under green, and all of a sudden the green you were going to make it up under, or the other way around, for Coffee to pit early, now that buffer you had is gone, and all of a sudden everyone's on the same tires. Again, another reminder, if you're just joining us, a unintentional error, if you will, in the session, and unlimited tire sets means if a caution comes out, again, everything's kind of wiped off the board. Could you imagine all the leaders would come get 4 fresh Goodyears, and all of a sudden, any choices you made here in Stage 3 go completely out the window.
Exactly. It's unlimited tire set night, I guess you can call it. I know that's definitely not planned, but that's and the challenge of building a race session when you have a technical issue like tonight. That in mind, if you look at Harper, one of those that is toughing it out. Cox, Cornette, Moore, Davis, along with Sanchez, all banking on a yellow and or trying to make sure they have the freshest tires for the back end of the race to be on attack mode for the Coffee, who's about to retake the lead.
Yeah, and while I understand it, they're not going to have a super long amount of time to make this strategy work by running this long. I understand wanting to get the freshest tires in the field, but I just don't know if they're going to have the time to run those guys back down and make the strategy worth it in the end. Here comes the 0-0 to pit road. So right as we talked about it, he comes down. Man, that was close. Cox and Cornette there almost drew the caution we were talking about, as Cornette almost ran right over the top of that BMP 0-0. Timothy Harper will follow down pit road, and now we're left with just a handful of cars that have not yet made what is, at this point, definitely their last pit stop.
Indeed. Now, as they all peel down and the strategies unfold itself, mind you, look at where Rogers is. We talked about the time was expected to go down. It's already down to 12 seconds. That's in 13 laps already for the 44. That car is moving. Bowie's on the same call. He's plowing his way to the field. I don't know if this strategy is even going unless there's a big advantage of the pickup when they come down to pit. There's a big gamble with that because the time under pit road is about 37 seconds from lane to lane, not including entry and exit here, Dawson. Mark Sanchez is in, but if you are amongst those thinking of 2 tire strats, if you or 2 pit stop strategies, I don't know if you're making up 37 seconds in the span of 50, 40, even 60 laps to throw different numbers out.
No, I just don't see where it would be possible. You'd have to gain a considerable amount of time per lap and then maintain that over the course of the final 50, 60 laps of the run. We've just not seen the tires can hang on that long when you're pushing them to that degree. So I just don't see a strategy or a world where that 2-stop works, although Wilson and Christensen have already tried it. Chris Cornette's on pit road, one of the final lead group cars to come down pit lane. It's now Moore and Davis. They're the only 2 left inside of the top 20 that have yet to come down pit road and are running extremely long. So we'll wait those 2 cars. For the Coffee and Rogers conversation now, we have to wonder, will the Rogers time plateau here at some point? Again, I just talked about you can't maintain that pace, the pace difference. Almost trouble. There is trouble on the front stretch. Mark Sanchez went around. It doesn't draw the caution, but did half spin for the 29 of Sanchez and brought a bit of a moment of panic for a couple of drivers there. But anyway, with Coffee and Rogers has to hope he can maintain the pace to pick up the time. And then, oh, by the way, that's just to make it there, let alone make the pass.
Take a look at the top of the pots that's coming to replay of what you're talking about. Here's a look at Mark Sanchez. Fresh tires, goes low down the back stretch already. He's already got the nose punched into with damage, so the arrow's thrown off a bit. And then, just a little bit too low.
Boy, a moment of panic there for some of the guys at the front of the field that really did not want to see a caution come out because of that, and they get their wished errors. It does not quite draw the caution, but a tough break nonetheless for Sanchez. By the way, Brandon Bowie in this strategy kind of merry-go-round that we're on here in Stage 3, he's worked all the way to the 4th position on the racetrack as they run right now in this mixture of strategies that we've got going on. Bowie may snag another top 5 out of this as he goes by Owens and might get by Gallimore for 3rd.
Yeah, this might be pretty solid in terms of the battling. Bowie pretty quickly makes the move, though. That's 18 lap difference on tires for you. Next one on the fresher tires up, technically speaking, would be Alex Murray, but he is already another 5 seconds back of this. That in mind, The net lead is down to 8 seconds. Right now that 44 is flying. Here's a look at one of those also trying to fly. Little bit of a different offset. Greg Carr's got older tires than Murray, but he's got fresher tires than Christensen, than Owens, than Gallimore.
This could pan out to be massive. When we talk about the point strategy earlier when talking about Kenny Reel, for Greg Carr, he's down in that scenario as well. This could be a big-time night for him, for Owens also. If they both hold their spots right now, they run 5th and 6th. For Christensen in 7th. Man, some of the guys around the cut line slated to have a big-time day, and Carr could even go get a couple of more spots here in front of him and really have a banner night when he needs it most with just 3 races left until the chase. With Christensen backsliding, Carr, if he runs down William Owens, this is a huge, huge, huge run for car 25.
This has turned into a huge one for Carr in terms of strategy. Yeah, there's drivers like Fetterplay is going to have the opportunity to attack him here, but it puts him in a better situation than most, that maybe around 10th to 15th-ish range. Compared to the Christensen, it's, again, a tough gamble that he took here, being one of the first to come down on his Goodyear Eagles. There's the look at the Better Place machines passed on by the 25. But right now, I think one of the biggest things to see is how far someone like a Cornette gets, or a Davis, or a Corey Moore. They need to close up 34 seconds right now because they're one of the last people to pit those groups of cars just mentioned. They're right now far back as need to get a full lap and then pass everyone again.
That's what I mean. They're running long. I just don't think that it was going to work. I mean, a number of those cars are still 1 lap down. Notably, Matt Cox, who is kind of the top running car that ran super long, is going to unlap himself here momentarily and go back to being on the lead lap. Timothy Harper is right on his tail, pretty much in the 23. So a pair of cars that are going to unlap themselves and at least have an opportunity should something happen. But again, you got to make up just too much time. There's not going to be enough laps left for them to make up that delta as we run right now without any kind of incidents or chaotic calamity here in the last 60. So here's Cox. He's going to unlap himself as we look back. Better Place is caught on here in stage 3, again with the slightly newer tires than some of the cars in front of him. In fact, 25 lap newer than Paul Gallimore, running just to his front end. So Better Place could get as high as the 4th spot here on this run as well. Another quietly great run for the 34. That's been the story for him this year. Quiet, solid consistency for Brandon Fetterplace. Another night of it tonight.
Indeed. Down to 60 laps to go here in this one. For those just tuning in, Coffee leads, but he's on 20 lap older tires. It's become a strategy mixture across the entire pack with the way this race has gone. Fetter Place on the move, looking for 4th, takes it away. He's able to quickly make the pass with him on your 25 lap old fresher tires than the 11 machine on the racetrack. All this is to say, with the new tires about to fly the way through, plenty of races you can say is on the network in the coming up days here, because remember, Dawson, it's not just Moonshiners on the network. We've had a lot of racing with MLSR pickup, with B Open on Thursday, the A Open on Sunday, and Tuesday the C Open. 2 of those series are here actually, including MLSR. And you also throw in the mix a full distance race at Phoenix on Saturday.
A lot of fun racing coming up. Again, MLSR has put on some really great stuff in its first few weeks here on the network. Been fun to kind of tune in and get to watch those guys go to battle in several different cars, which I think has been really fun to see the different dynamics, how each track runs in each car. And then again, the full lengther at Phoenix. I love Phoenix personally as a driver. That one will be fun to watch for me. For guys that don't like Phoenix, maybe not as fun to drive in the race car. One of my favorite tracks to race because you can do so much there. Coffee continues to lead. The lead is shrinking, but as I've watched this Delta, JP, if I'm doing the math right, the laps have started to plateau for Sean Rogers. He is not gaining enough time, I don't think, at this point, to make it to Alex Coffey if the time stays the same. Now, if Coffey's times fall off a cliff as we get to the 70 lap mark on tires, that's a different story. But 20 lap newer tires and the times have started to even out just the slightest bit from Coffey to Rogers, and at the rate that those two cars are going, I don't think Rogers has enough laps to make it to the 54 at this point.
Yeah, I don't know how this is all going to play out here. But really speaking, all I could say, Dawson, is we were expecting carnage, we were expecting chaos, all this, all that. Said this before earlier in the race, and it's really lived up to the same way. It's been a clean, green stage number 3. Looking back, Richmond, we had the same amount of cars last year. That was also just a 5-caution affair in a 250 lapper. For whatever reason, Moonshiners the past 2 years has been relatively clean here.
And again, you think about Richmond and the NASCAR side of things and the official racing side of things this week has certainly not been the cleanest of affairs. And NASCAR has provided so many of those chaotic moments at this racetrack. And you'd expect that we'd have the same on Wednesdays. But these guys opting to go with strategy race. And that's back-to-back weeks now, by the way. Pretty well green last week in Stage 3 also, which led us into this mixed bag of strategies leading into the end of the race. And again, I talked about it last week at the end of the show. My favorite types of race to call as a broadcaster is strategy, seeing how every tire call works out and seeing how every driver makes things work in a long green flag run and comers and goers. My favorite type of racing to watch. We're seeing it again here tonight. William Owens on pit road. He's trying the two-stop strategy here with 50 laps to go. Again, he was already towards the tail end of the lead lap. Greg Carr, actually. So a guy we just mentioned in Greg Carr, he's also going to try the two-stop here with 49 laps to go.
So Carr, the first to pull the pin. William Owens actually was the last time by. So 2 different cars have now pulled their cars down pit road to take some new tires and see, can they make a two-stopper work? For reference, Owens needs to gain 54 seconds on the leader right now, while Carr needs to gain 51-ish seconds. Yeah, that math's not mathing.
Now, as much as the Sean Rogers math was not mathing a second ago, certainly 54 seconds is going to be a lot to ask for the cars trying the two-stoppers. Speaking of Rogers, just 3 seconds back. Now he is starting to pick up the pace, so perhaps he is going to get there. It looked for a moment like it had plateaued. It has gone back to about 0.3 difference, so Rogers likely will get to Coffey now on this run in the 54, and that's because Alex Coffey's on pit road. The race leader is going to two-stop it with 47 to go. So is Gallimore. Man, a wild curveball in this race as Coffey opts to two-stop.
Well, we were talking about the possibility with the timing of his stop. That's only 64 laps, but he's not leaving a lot of runway to get back up to Rogers and co. here, who are pretty clearly in a spot to potentially one-stop it. Gallimore also took the two-stop, so some of the team members have hedged their bets, and we have a near spinner. Johnny Shea nearly wrecked on pit road.
Man, so for Coffey, gotta wonder if he gave himself the option, watch the delta, see where Rogers got to, and then go from there and try to make a decision on the strategy. Look back at Johnny Shade's pit entry just a moment ago, but you wonder if Coffey just gave himself the option. If he gets this close, I'm coming to pit road, we're going to two-stop it, or that was just the call the entire time, as we saw the dig cars do last week in Iowa. Here's Shade to the apron, and something similar we've seen all week. When you get the lefts on the flat, the right's on the track, one side moving faster than the others with the banking. Car almost gets around on him, a big save there.
Aaron Coffey's not happy on the radio, so something happening with Coffey here. Obviously something going on with that big cluster he just had to drive through and then nearly wrecked with, because he got contact with Ryan Catalano.
This has been a recurring storyline. Coffey and Catalano have had a couple of run-ins this season. Oh man, Ryan Catalano drops right down on the nose of Coffey, who was on brand new tires, and Coffey just shoots him up the racetrack and says, no thank you, not tonight. moves him out of the way. Man, no wonder for Alex Coffey some frustration there as Catalano drove right across his front nose.
So that has now seen Coffey lose a little bit of time. He's already passed by Christensen, no effort. But there's a big difference compared to a lot of the errors, I think, here, Dawson, on the numbers we mentioned. On Coffey is one of the only drivers who might have a chance to make this work because 25 seconds back, 1.3 seconds quicker a lap. The math does math there.
Well, the maths for now, but it's not going to stay a 1.3 second advantage. Man, almost another incident for Johnny Shade right in front of Coffey, who's going to have to alter the line here in turn 3 up around Shade. So, man, a couple of times now, the Coffey has lost some time to a car that is on older tires than he is. It'll certainly harm the lap time at the lines. Just over a second still is the gap between Coffey and Rogers in terms of lap times. The math is mathing, but it's only mathing for now. I mean, I talked about how much Rogers' time had plateaued last time by running long. It's not going to be 1.3 seconds advantage the entire last run. He's got to gain a bunch now and really put a dent in this gap to try to go for it here at the end.
Hearing Kenny Reel made a loud noise on the radio. I don't know what that would mean. I have a feeling it involves that car. Little bit of a tight squeeze for the fresh tires there for Wilson getting up to speed.
Kenny Reel trying to maximize every position here because he's got fresh tires coming in the rearview mirror, and Cornette and Coffey that have opted for the two-stop. Reel trying to maximize his night down around the cut line. You can understand some frustration there, man. Right in front of Johnny Shade. Again, right up front of the leader, Rogers. Hochschild, Medina, Carr. This is a mess right in front of car 44 that he's about to get into. Hochschild way up the speedway as Rogers slowly approaches this group, and that's going to potentially help the Alex Coffey machine as he tries to claw back into this thing.
Yeah, this has become a flurry of car activity of drivers just trying to avoid trouble. Better place amongst those, just continuing to plug away on his spots, though, right towards Bowie. Talked about equalization. He was 3/10 quicker on a 6-lap tire difference with some of the traffic last time. The previous time now, that just updated, was only within a 10th. So I think right now, drivers like Federer Place are getting to the traffic get better, but Bowie's not getting any favors by these two in front of him feeding dirty air.
No, not at all. He's stuck again behind one of these other groups of cars that are kind of off cycle from what the race leaders are running. And so for Bowie and Federer Place, they're actually about to be run down by Matt Cox, as well as on about 6-lap fresher tires than even these two cars are. So Cox trying to work back into this scenario. Harper is not too terribly far out of this battle either. So both those cars trying to make something happen late in this race as well. Again, trying to salvage good finishes. Matt Cox led laps earlier in this race. Talked about how good Federer Place has been, how good Harper's been. Murray sat on the pole. Now, granted, if the pace continues for Alex Coffey, it's potential that he could jump all of these cars by the time this run ends. Man, look at this mess right here. Cox, Wilson, Federer Place, almost 3 wide to turn 1.
Yeah, you see the squeezes and the cut-throughs. Right now, you see the 20 making its way through. Christensen indeed was the part of me there. Part of me for Wilson. Nearly into the back of Catalano now.
You're starting to tread towards the edge of kind of what we can do on the racetrack before we get too far over the cliff and bring out a caution flag. We've had a couple of close calls with Sanchez and Johnny Shade a couple of times. Now this that just happened right around our top 5, some of our top 5 cars on the racetrack. So, we're starting to slowly inch towards where it gets a little too dangerous. Matt Cox just drove all the way, by the way, from 5th to 2nd in about 8 laps or so on about 6-lap older tires. So for Cox, a potential big-time night is coming true for him as he now runs second only to his BMP teammate. But we're starting to inch closer to where that chaos could potentially throw things on its head with only 29 to go. As Coffey has really cut into the delta. It's only 13 seconds between the two provisional leaders here. Coffey's up to 6th.
The pit stop sequence for one driver, that is Jose Medina coming out of the lane. So we're under 30 laps to go here in this one. Hashiel try to stick up to the high side, make sure no trouble. Fetterplace still working to make the pass. Get around. Bowie trying to stay to the middle. Catalano still holding his line as the 34 clears. Mind you, Coffey is almost in the picture here too. He's within 2 seconds of this battle.
Yeah, doing some math, 7/10ths better than Rogers the last few laps for Coffey would put him there with about, I would say, 5 laps to go. So it's not a big window here for Coffey. He's got to make quick work or hope that Rogers experiences some problems, and Rogers is in wide open racetrack right now. He has no one around him, almost a full straightaway behind him, a half a straightaway in front of him. And Coffey is about to get into this absolute mess where Bowie and Harper and Fetterplace and Cox are all running. So Coffey's about to experience a ton of traffic as he tries to make up the last bit of the time. Rogers, meanwhile, he's just running time trial laps as they run on the speedway right now.
And this is to where you can see the big traffic coming in, especially with Bowie's plummet. Harper now plowing his way onto the traffic up in the top 4. 53 laps on his tires, so the same cycle as the 00, so that's definitely helping. But look who's there. Here it comes, the orange 54. Coffey to the inside of the 35. His times are still quick. He is still the only driver outside of Blaine Wilson up in the 21-second bracket. Cleared by 1. Now needs to get around Harper. He's got 10 seconds, the gap to clear up in 23 laps.
But here's the problem. In traffic, the time is plateauing. It's down to 4/10ths advantage, and I just don't think that's enough. It's razor thin close to the laps he's got left. But he's got to hope he can manage this traffic and manage it quickly. That time around, he ran 22:10 to Rogers 22:49. Only 4/10ths difference is, again, as close as it gets in terms of making up this delta one way or the other. Rogers by the line again, that time a 22.5. Coffey a little bit easier through traffic that time, back down to a 22.08. Folks, it's going to be very close on whether or not Alex Coffey makes this happen, but the lap times are still adding up. He's got one more car to negotiate, and then he'll have some clean track in front of him.
Yep, you see just how much the traffic is really coming in now. See them that side by side with Catalano and company, not helping some of the others back there, but Coffey ready to go on Cox. So looks like Matt is loose. See him pushing up the track now to get himself a little squeeze. Trying to hold back the 54, but again, fresh Goodyear Eagles zip their way up now to second. 9 seconds. 9 seconds is what needs to be chipped away. The interval was closing up before that pass, still even. It's now down to 8.6. It's going down more and more. Is an error 10th and a half or so. Near 2/10ths, in fact, in the first sector compared to Rogers in the last lap.
Man, it is going to be so close. It's going to be razor thin close. It's still a half a second better for Coffey. These are Herculean lap times, by the way, as we reach 30 laps into his stint. To still be running just inside or just outside the 22-lap bracket. I mean, these are really good lap times for Coffey, and now he's got clean track. It's inside 8 seconds. He only has 18 laps to do it, but at the line, that time 6/10ths faster for Coffey. 22 flat to Rogers 22.6. Coffey is on rails. He'll have more traffic to deal with, but it's going to be close.
Here we go. Right now, Coffey flying. So is Medina because he's on fresh tires as well. Well, Medina is doing a very good thing, I think, in the case of traffic. He recognizes he's faster, but doesn't want to be a factor for the battle for the race win, knowing the 54 is getting more and more time chipped away on his target. But the question is, how will the others fare out that are in their own battles? Like, for example, Davis, Treat, Moore, all in the battle for the top 10 up the road.
Man, this is going to be so close. 4/10ths a lap would give him 6.4. By the time we reach the checkered flag, he's 6.8 seconds back, so he's got to pick it up just a little more or hope Rogers gets into a little bit more lap traffic. which he is currently dealing with in Blaine Wilson. Rogers held up behind the 18 of Wilson. That's a whole different ball game in this race, as the 44 has been unable to find his way around the Blaine Wilson machine late in the going here with only 14 to go.
Different teammates coming into play, to say the least, as Davis near squeeze on Treat. 3 wide, Coffee, no place to wait. He needs to go places. I don't think this interval is closing up enough to get there now. We talked about the potential of the equalization. That's become a factor. It's still near 6 seconds with 14 coming to 13 to go. Right now, Coffee needs a caution. That's his best chance because he's going to be like 5 laps short with the way this is looking.
Yeah, he really is just going to be just short if it continues on. Really no traffic in front of Rogers either. There's lap cars driving away from Rogers right now. So Coffee is about to get to clean track, though. Once he gets past Hochschild, he'll have 12 laps, basically 11 to run, again, as quickly as he can. Now he's got wide open track. He's in that gap where Rogers was a moment ago. So now he just has to the lap times hold up, and he gets back to about that 6-second bracket, or 6/10 bracket, which would allow him to get back to Rogers. Let's see what the lap times are right here. A 51 for Rogers, Coffee a 22. It's not going to be good enough with 11 to go. It's starting to plateau just a little bit.
Wrong place, wrong time in terms of the way the tire fall is going here for Coffee.
Oh, trouble off turn 4. Christensen is just spun. He spun right in front of Wilson. He almost looped it around. It keeps it green, but boy, for a moment there, Sean Rogers saw the race flash before his eyes.
Oh my goodness. That is a dig car. I don't know what he was doing because he cut onto the flat. Was that a pit stop entry? Or what? That was after the entry for the pit lane. He put the lefts on the flat.
Not a ton of, obviously reasonable explanations there. I wonder just a mental lapse perhaps for Christensen. The night has kind of fallen away from him here in the late stages. The strategy didn't work, and he's all the way back in 19th. Sometimes as a driver you can, again, lapse mentally, just kind of lose focus and zone out, and just kind of say, oh man, I just want this night over with, and it can lead to an issue like that. And so potentially that's the case there, but man, we saw what happened to Johnny Shade just a little bit ago with the same thing, where he got 2 tires on the flat, 2 tires on the track, and almost a similar incident there for Christensen. It almost drew the caution flag.
I mean, I've seen Ashton Crowder in one series use the flat on the entry for balance. It made something work in a couple different series. Exit is a whole different story, obviously. Coffee, mind you, is not in the range, under 4 seconds. Right now, the close battles still keeping up with drivers like Fitter Place, Harper and company, bumper to bumper. So we are down under 10 laps to go, coming to right under 6.
Well, now Nigel Christensen, who just half spun a moment ago, putting up a bit of a fight against Sean Rogers, getting back to 1 lap down. That'll buy Coffee a little bit, but again, it's just too little, too late for Alex Coffee in this race. Brandon Bowie's backslid, by the way, on this run all the way to 7th as he loses that spot to Cornette. So safe to say that for Chris Cornette, it worked. So he'll get all the way back to 6th. This will be a really good night for Cornette in terms of the results that he's been waiting on to put a race together. The strategy goes his way tonight as he's looking down the barrel of potentially at least a 6th place finish. Alex Murray recovers to 8th. Timothy Harper 4th. Some good runs tonight. Kenny Reel, another top 10 brewing for him as well, with the strategy going his way also.
Under 5 laps to go, already to 4 for the front of the field. Gap already is under 3 seconds. Right now, you see some of the air battles like Bowie versus Murray. Harper has lost ground in the battle to Fitter Place. Side by side, by the way, 22 and 35 off screen, but this has been a solid race. Murray makes the pass. That gives him 7th. So we're in the home stretch. Strategy attempts galore tonight, but even in a race with a very long distance, 250 laps last year, 300 this year, it still comes down to potentially here running out of laps for those on some of the strategies.
Tantalizingly close for Alex Coffey And, it's similar to what we saw Alex Murray try last week. Coffee gets closer, but just no cigar. His second place is good in the points, but man, to be that close is tough for him. But for Rogers, the short track dominance continues.
1 to go, brought to you by Elite Gaming. Final lap for Sean Rogers. Still has the lead by a second and a half. By the skin of his teeth on the strategy call. By 3 laps, if you add it up that way. Sean Rogers is able to withstand the 2-stop to win at Richmond.
We called him the short track king of the summer. He reigns again tonight in Richmond. Another short track win for Sean Rogers. And by the way, we go to Loudon next week as well. A huge summertime stretch for Team 44.
Coffee and Fetter Place join on the podium. And Rogers has been on a tear. An absolute tear. This has been a successful stretch and then some. Lots of victories built up. And he builds up another one. Up on the board for Rogers. This breaks his tie with Randy Mullins in the win total. And funnily enough, he's tied with one of the most dominant drivers of this season, Brandon Bowie, in career wins now. Rogers had already put in the lock in the past few weeks to try and make sure he made the postseason. He's going to be all the more excited with the trip to victory lane tonight at the action track here at Strawberry Hill. We'll take a step aside. We come back. Post-race coverage and results. You're watching tonight's coverage on Precision Entertainment. Welcome back, everyone, to tonight's coverage for post-race coverage here on Precision Entertainment for the Moonshiners Racing League and the GMD Janitorial Cup Series, where Sean Rogers, Alex Coffey, Brandon Fitter Place all on the podium. Rogers getting the win tonight. He also had Timothy Harper and Matt Cox in the top 5. Apparently, Murray did confirm he gave himself and Corey more damage at one moment, where they ended up hitting the fence. That's why we've seen some of the damage from the 22. Seen the plummet there. Chris Cornett getting ahead of Murray. Bowie, Reel, and Corey Moore, despite his damage, top 10.
Big run for Kenny Reel, P9. Big run for Greg Carr, P11. I know it's not a flashy top 10, but for him, maximized on some points. Chris Davis, 12th. Jim Treat, 13th. One of his better results of the season. William Owens never replicated the opening 2 stages. Goes 14th. Man, the backslide for Paul Gallimore. What could have been for him in the 15th spot. Rest of the top 20, Ryan Catalano, Blaine Wilson, Nigel Christensen, Chris Vinson, and Johnny Shade, 16 through 20.
21st goes to Mark Sanchez tonight. Not the night he needed. Medina, Hochschild, Holden, 90 laps down after his crash on pit road. Then early exits from Mackin, Bowen, Garcia, and Chandler tonight from the topsy-turvy first stage or so. That is your look at the running order tonight. Here tonight for Moonshiners this evening on Precision Entertainment. As per usual, 3, 2, 1 your order as we go to Victory Designs Victory Lane to talk with your podium runners. Victory Designs is the official sponsor to Pull Ward and Victory Lane in this series. Brandon Fetterplace, we'll start with him inside the top 3 here tonight. Brandon Fetterplace, first things first, let's talk things through on the evening because it ended up being a cleaner race than most thought. How would you describe your car as you were able to get things to work on your strategy for a podium?
Well, I mean, the car, the set that we brought here tonight was actually really good. I've just struggled here ever since the rescan or whatever they did at this track the last time. I've just struggled. And so, I really just wanted a top 10, just a top 10 car all night. That's really all that I wanted. And, things kind of worked out. I mean, it seemed like everyone kind of fell off as the run went along, and I seemed to kind of keep pace. I didn't really fall off as much as everyone else, it didn't seem like anyway. And it really started giving me confidence there going into the second stage. Just, I made a couple of adjustments, and the car just kind of took off for me. It never really got out of shape, and I was just able to kind of maintain.
And really speaking, you mentioned the difficulties with this type of scan. In terms of the main thing, what was the kind of the focal point to build the cup car for this race here tonight, for what you had setup-wise, to make sure it was really good?
Honestly, you just needed to make sure that the car rotated. Off the corners, the car was loose. Into the corner, the car was loose. And it really seemed like if you kind of stepped over that boundary, you were going to pay for it. So it was just about patience. You needed the car to rotate really well, and just the ability to kind of save what you had. Because like I said, I mean, some of these guys, they fell off pretty bad as the run went along. So you really just needed your car to kind of just stay a flat, steady pace.
How do you feel about next week, where it's another short track on the schedule, New Hampshire?
To be honest, that's another one of those tracks that isn't really my favorite. I'm just going to have to put in the time. I mean, that's really all that there is. You just, I have to trust in the setup that I'm, that we have, and work on my points and just kind of make sure that I don't overstep the edge and, stay out of trouble.
Any shots you'd like to give here tonight?
Oh, yeah. Thanks to Barry for allowing me to run here at Aero. Thanks to Premier for all those fast setups that we get every single week. Thanks to y'all for the broadcast, everyone who watches these broadcasts, all the league owners, sponsors, everyone who makes this happen every week. And I'll go get them next week.
Congratulations on the top three.
Thank you, sir.
Brandon Fitter place. Coming away with the top three, Alex Coffey. Coming away in second, he's with Dawson.
Standing by with second place finisher Alex Coffey. Alex, obviously the strategy comes into play in stage 3. We knew the gauntlet long stage, 180 laps, would mean the pit window would be wide. Someone was bound to try to pit early and two-stop. You go with a two-stop rather than a one. What went into the decision? Obviously, you come back to finish second, but what went into the decision to two-stop there late in the stage?
I don't know. Kind of Iowa last week. I tried to one-stop it and kind of didn't work out. So tire wear is not quite as bad here, but we had a longer run. So I figured I'd learned my lesson last week and try to two-stop it. So I almost had them.
Yeah, a few more laps, surely it would have been to the race leader. Nonetheless, P2 for you tonight. Obviously, the track changes as the night goes on. We go from day to night. It cools down just a little bit, but stays warm. How did you keep up with the racetrack in terms of the adjustments on the race car throughout the night?
I actually didn't change a thing all night on it. Murray had a rocket ship under us, so shout out to Precision Speed Solutions and Alex Murray, and Corey Moore worked on the set a little bit this week too. So shout out to those guys. They definitely gave me a winning piece. I feel like we're on the winning strategy. Just lost a little time getting through lap traffic there, but you'll have that.
We head to Loudon next week. It was a playoff race last year in 2025. Saw you lead laps, share a battle for the win. How do you feel going into next week, the penultimate race of the regular season?
I'm gonna feel real good if we can bring a piece like we had tonight. Last year we were real good there, so looking forward to it. I always like the flatter, shorter tracks. So I know Sean will be fast. He's been on a roll in short track, so got to come prepared. We'll try our best to do that.
P2 for you tonight in Richmond. Before we let you go and prep for Loudon next week, are there any other thank yous or shout outs you'd like to give?
Oh yeah, shout out to everybody on Dig. Nigel, Johnny, Blaine, Murray, Tim, Corey, all those guys. Shout out to PayRVA, the race sponsor tonight. They're on the car, I think on the quarter panel. So most of my team was running PayRVA primaries, and shout out to Off Axis, like I said earlier, Precision Speed Solutions, Kyle and Barry, and all the other admins for putting on the league. I mean, just helping out, keeping it going. Prayers for Barry and everybody for tuning in.
Alex, thanks for the time. Congrats on the second place finish tonight, and we'll see you next week in Loudon.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Once again, that's Alex Coffey coming away second tonight, but the top step of the podium and the driver in victory resides victory lane tonight. Sean Rogers, new look, same short track speed it seems. How would you describe the win tonight as you end up holding back Coffey, who was getting pretty close on his two-stopper?
Yeah, definitely. It was another great race by us. Another really long green flag run to end it, which I like a good green flag run. I wasn't sure if I had the fastest car, and if we got some cautions, I don't know if I had the short run speed. But all in all, I had a really fast car on the long run, and I was married to that bottom, and that really saved some tire for me, and that led me to be able to one stop it and split it right down the middle, 90 and 90, and it ended up working out.
Of course, a different look here on the race car tonight. Talk us about the different look you put on and the different number font.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Tony Meyering. He worked hard on this car for me this afternoon. The new sponsor, Chug Jam. It is my brother and his buddies' TikTok. They go live every Friday night at 8 o'clock. So check them out. It's at Chug Jam on TikTok Live. So give them a shout out. But I've been telling them I would put them on the car for a little while now. And I finally got around. I didn't have any time to paint, so shout out to Tony for throwing this together for me. And good to see it in victory lane on its main voyage. And you're going to see that car again, I promise.
How do you feel about New Hampshire next week?
Unfortunately, due to work constraints, there's a chance that I won't be there, which kind of sucks, because we got some good momentum here rolling. Won 3 of the last 4, so that kind of sucks. But we got to pay the bills, so we'll see if I can make it back from a work deal in time.
Any shows you'd like to give here tonight?
I already mentioned Chug Jam, so shout out to them. Shout out to my sponsors, Icon Apparel. They've been with me for quite some time. Shout out to my super fans, my dad and Gwenny, always watching. So that's great to have that support. All my teammates at BMP, we always push at each other all week to get better, and the results show for themselves. Shout out to Barry and all the other admins for putting on this great league, and you guys for putting on a hell of a show every Wednesday night.
Congratulations on the win tonight, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Sean Rogers comes away at the top step of the podium. I'd like to thank everyone for taking time to speak with us during post-race coverage here at Precision Entertainment. Your final thoughts on tonight here, Dawson, for the PayRVA 300, where Richmond definitely showcased how much the tires mean and how much being on the right strategy could win you or lose you the race.
Again, I can't say enough about how much I just love calling strategy races. Again, just the number math that goes into it, doing the math of the time delta, and, is the early strategy going to work this time? Is the late strategy going to work this time? In this case, both the last 2 times, the late strategy has worked, both times with Sean Rogers. So, something to note there potentially for the future. Although you heard Alex Coffey say the lap traffic, if he gets through it a little quicker, we may be looking at a different result. He finishes just a second back, but regardless, the wide open pit window makes for some really fun racing, comers and goers and guys on different strategies trying to make it work. I mean, at every time you're on the edge of your seat waiting, is a caution going to come out? Is that guy going to get there? Is that strategy going to work? It makes it really fun to watch, and certainly less attrition filled than we thought tonight as well at Richmond. A trip to the Magic Mile next weekend, New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon. Cannot wait for that one. That's another track kind of similar to what we've seen at a couple of the short tracks where a lot of different lines can work. You're going to see guys run all the way down from the flat on the apron, all the way up 3 lanes off the bottom, and you're going to see a big variance of lines. The playoff race last year was a fun one to be a part of. Certainly next week we're in for another good one, and potentially another tire strategy race, the way these Gen 7 races have gone on the short tracks this year.
Indeed, we'll see that on the 26th of August, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to tune in for that coverage here on Precision and what is going to be a wild weekend again. But it's time to say goodbye. Tonight's coverage was definitely an interesting one as we end things off here from the action track. For my co-announcer Dawson Wise, for our producer Howie Burrows, who used cameras, Whiplash sim cams with the cameras provided by Whiplash sim cam, should say. And Zach Case, who was on socials. I'm Justin Brent saying so long. Enjoy the rest of your evening. You've been watching the Moonshiners Racing League and the GMD Janitorial Cup Series. Congratulations to your winner, Sean Rogers. He gets it done at Richmond.